Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Grand Voyage. The SvenScum of the Grand Line. Chapter 41. Its speed is so fast that it is too late for Charles to make any response. I can only watch the bullet hit me. Laugh. The sound of bullets passing through flesh and blood sounded, and the heart of St. Charles Rose was directly pierced by bullets. Blood spurted out. The celestial dragons, who symbolized supremacy, collapsed with a bang. Boom. The originally silent auction venue immediately boiled after seeing this picture. He killed celestial dragons. Isn't Obai the 7 warlords of the sea recognized by the world government? Why would he attack celestial dragons? Leave. Marine Admiral is coming soon. If we don't leave, we will also be implicated. Following these horrified words, the people in the auction venue began to run wildly towards the gate as agreed. Obai didn't care about this, he just smiled and watched these people start to flee. At the same time, St. Roswald and Zaluria Palace, who were sitting at the front, finally reacted. Roswald roared at Obai as if his eyes were about to pop out. You lowly human, what have you done? You fools, kill him for me. No, don't kill him, I'll take him back to Mariajoy and let him torture him to death. Even the Shah Lulia Palace, which had just said that Obai would be her husband, began to issue orders to the CP9 members who were protecting them. Didn't you hear? Go and get that guy up. This kind of guy who dares to shoot at celestial dragons will never allow him to continue to live. After hearing the order of St. Roswald and Shalulia Palace, the CP9 members who followed them to Subjugating archipelago showed embarrassed expressions on their faces. As members of CP9, they have already received information about Obai's strength. Even Aokiji, who was Marine Admiral, could not gain an advantage in the battle with Obai. Let them deal with Obai. What's the difference between letting them die? However, if they go against the will of celestial dragons and are known to the world government, their fate will only be more tragic than if they died at the hands of Obai. In this case, the members of CP9 all looked at each other and rushed towards Obai's location with death intent. Seeing their movements, Robin crossed his hands and murmured, "Second Flower Master." With Robin using the flower fruit ability, several of the CP9 members grew 2 palms from their shoulders, grabbed each other's chin and pushed them upwards. Just hearing a click, these CP9 members were directly broken by Robin's necks. At the same time, Khalifa, who was wearing a leather jacket with high heels, stood up and pointed his index finger to the CP9 member opposite. Finger pistol. Laugh. Finger pistol penetrated the opponent's chest and directly took the lives of several CP9 members. And several ghosts also appeared on Perona, and they passed through the bodies of several other CP9 members. Under the influence of the negative ghost, they directly lost the will to continue to attack. Lying on the ground helplessly, waiting for Robin and Khalifa to take their lives. Watching all the CP9 members get killed by Robin, Khalifa, and Perona, St. Roswald and Shalulia Palace finally panicked. The trajectory of things has been completely out of their control. Obai's madness is completely beyond their expectations. St. Roswald took out the golden pistol on his waist, aimed at Obai with trembling hands, and said in a panicked tone, "Don't come here. I tell you, if you kill celestial dragons, Marine and the world government will never let you go. If you leave now, I can pretend nothing happened." Hearing this, Obai looked at each other with interest. "Is that so? However, I have already killed your son. Whether I kill you again or not, the result is the same, isn't it?" When St. Roswald heard this, his body trembled slightly uncontrollably. Looking at Obai who was getting closer, Roswader suddenly pulled the trigger. Boom! The bullet hovered in front of Obai again. Obai jokingly looked at St. Roswald opposite, and said regretfully, "I was going to let you go, but you wanted to shoot me, you said, can you blame me?" St. Roswald's eyes almost popped out when he heard the words. At this time, St. Roswald obviously won't believe Obai's nonsense. "When I pulled the trigger one after another, I wanted to make a final struggle." Under the terrified gaze of St. Roswader, Obai moved his fingers slightly, and the bullet suspended in front of him shot towards him. Laugh. A blood-red bullet hole was left in the limbs, chest, and between the eyebrows. Roswald's eyes fell to the ground unwillingly. "If I knew this would happen, I would never come to Subjugating archipelago." seeing his brother and father die in front of him one after another. Obai, who has walked in front of him, is like a devil in the eyes of Zalulia Palace. It is an understatement to let so many people die, but there is still that elegant smile on his face. Shalulia Palace looked at Obai in horror, his body wriggled back unconsciously, shook his head and looked at Obai pleadingly. Don't kill me, please don't kill me. I'm willing to do anything, as long as you're willing to let me go. Obai was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then chuckled lightly. Don't be stupid, I don't kill women. As he spoke, Obai raised his right hand, and under the control of the magnetic fruit's ability, a collar appeared in front of Zalulia Palace. Shalulia Palace looked at Obai in panic and puzzled, not understanding what he meant. With a gentle smile on Obai's face, he took the initiative to comfort him. Put it on, this is specially prepared for you. I know, you are not like your stupid father and brother. You should be a smart person, right? Shalulia Palace understood Obai's implication. If she is not smart and chooses to refuse to wear this collar, Obai doesn't mind letting her end up in the same situation as her father and brother. Obviously only they, celestial dragons, treat others like this. When have they been enslaved by mere humans? And most importantly, Obai, the devil who always has a warm smile on his face, wants to wear the collar himself. Just when Shalulia Palace hesitated, Obai's voice entered his ears. Don't you like the gift I specially prepared for you? Hearing this, Shalulia Palace woke up instantly. This guy Obai never discussed with himself. If he couldn't satisfy the other party, he would definitely not be able to live. She doesn't want to die, she wants to live. Shalulia Palace used the fastest speed in her life to put the collar suspended in front of her on her neck. Watching the celestial dragons put the collar on himself, Obai nodded in satisfaction. It looks so fitting, and sure enough, you also like the gift I gave you. Shalulia Palace forced out a smile upon hearing the words. If there were no tears in her eyes, she should look happier. Yes, I like it very much. Obai didn't answer, just looked at each other with a smile. And Shalulia Palace also realized something, when even knelt down in front of Obai and said obediently. Master, I like the gift you gave me very much. Hearing this, Obai's mouth twitched slightly, and he hooked at Khalifa. Khalifa, she'll leave it to you first. Of course Khalifa has no objection to this. Even, being able to hold celestial dragons, the world aristocrats who were originally high above, this kind of behavior is not something that anyone can do. In terms of trainers, Khalifa, who was trained by Obai to belong to Obai wholeheartedly, naturally learned a lot of moves from Obai. After that, it seems to be very suitable for Zalulia Palace. Obai heard Shalulia Palace say that she wants to be her husband. But, being the husband of celestial dragons, how could it be comfortable to accept celestial dragons as slaves? The celestial dragons matter is resolved, and then we can wait for the arrival of Marine Admiral. But, before that, Obai looked at the mermaid Kami in the fish tank on the stage, and walked towards her slowly. Even the people in this auction ground, when they saw Obai kill celestial dragons, they immediately chose to run away. For fear of being implicated by the crazy Obai. In that case, isn't it a matter of course for this mermaid to become Obai's item? Looking at Obai's back, Trafalgar Law took a deep breath and muttered. What a crazy act. This guy Obai is not as rumored. He replaced Crocodile as the new 7 warlords of the sea by handing over the Fire Fist Ace. Only, is he not afraid of the consequences of killing celestial dragons and enslaving celestial dragons? Or, what is written in that newspaper, Obai's strength is comparable to Aokiji, is it true? Luo's face was full of shock. It was what Obai did that Luo couldn't accept for a while. The dignified world noble celestial dragons was either killed by Obai or put on a collar by Obai. Is this really the celestial dragons that he knows, arrogant and arrogant? Just as Luo was thinking about it, Babo who was beside him touched Luo's arm and asked carefully. Captain, are we not leaving yet? If I stay here, I'm afraid Marine Admiral will come. Hearing this, Luo took a deep breath and said solemnly. Leave. Obai didn't plan to let us go, at least not now. Beppo. Captain, what are you talking about? Obai didn't even look at us. Beppo didn't understand. if his captain wanted to stay and watch the fun, he would just say no. What nonsense is Luobai not planning to let them go? Seeing this, Luo didn't explain, he didn't want to bring panic to others. The moment Luobai killed celestial dragons, he was locked by Luobai, and an invisible sense of oppression was coercing Luo. Luo knows very well that this is Conqueror's Haki. It's just that he didn't expect that Luobai's use of Conqueror's Haki would be so strong. Although it is not clear what purpose Luobai did. But Luo didn't want to fight Luobai now, so he just stayed here for now. Went to Luobai on the stage and undid the explosive collar on Cammy's neck. He looked at the mermaid with a smile and said, "I bought you, and you are mine now." Cammy was a little overwhelmed when she heard the words, and felt Luobai's gentle gaze, which gradually calmed her panicked heart. But Cammy obviously did not forget the little eight in the Straw Hat group. Turning his head and looking over. After sensing Cammy's gaze, Luffy stood up abruptly, looked at Luobai and shouted, "Hey, Cammy is our friend, not something you can buy." Luobai ignored his shouting, but looked at Luo who was sitting not far away and said, "Trafalgar Law, be my servant." Hearing this, Luo's face changed. Was this the purpose? Feeling Luobai's gaze, Luo shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, but I have my own partner." Luobai smiled indifferently. "I didn't say that I want you to disband the pirates, but let you lead the Heart Pirates and become my subordinates together." A trace of anger flashed on Luo's face, and he refused with a sullen face. "I am not interested. If there is nothing else, I will go first. After all, because of your actions, Marine Admiral will be here soon." As he spoke, Luo wanted to get up and take Babo and the others away. However, he tried it and found that Luobai had aggravated the Conqueror's Haki that was pressing on him. This instantly made Luo's face extremely ugly. He turned his head to look at Luobai, wanting to know what he meant. Luobai looked at Luo regretfully and shook his head. "It's a pity, I really wanted you to be my servant." For Luobai, Sabayati Archipelago does have several devil fruit abilities that he wants to get. Luo's op fruit is clearly one of them. And Luo is also a good medical guy. If possible, Luobai wouldn't mind letting him be his own ship doctor. Of course, find another boat and keep it for others to use. After all, Luobai wants to take down all the powerful guys from Impel down. As for my own ship, of course it is reserved for opening the Crystal Palace. He had no intention of having other men on his boat. It's just a pity that Luobai's invitation was rejected. So, let's get the op fruit first. At this time, Luffy on the other side shouted to Luobai again. "Hey, I don't care what's going on with him, but I'm taking Cammy." "Cammy is our friend." Luobai turned his head and looked at the One Piece with interest, with a strange smile on his face. Straw Hat Luffy. When Luffy heard the words, he stood up straight and said excitedly, "My name is Monkey D. Luffy, the man who is going to be One Piece." Luo glanced at Luffy with pity in his eyes. Did this guy have a bad brain, or did he not realize Luobai's power? Or, what kind of background does he have? Do you have to provoke Luobai at this time? While Luo secretly sighed, Luobai looked at Luffy with a smile and asked, "It is said, what is the relationship between you and Fire Fist Ace?" Luffy looked at Luobai suspiciously. "Ah, do you know Ace? He's my brother." Luobai nodded with a smile, and then said something that made Luffy break the defense in an instant. "No, of course you know. After all, I handed that Fire Fist Ace to Marine myself." Hearing this, the expressions of all the members of the Straw Hats, including Luffy, changed greatly. Ace was given to Marine by Luobai. As Luffy's partners, they know very well how deep the relationship between Luffy and Ace is. Originally, I was thinking of using other methods to get Cammy back from Luobai. But now it seems that a fight between them and Luobai is inevitable. Luffy even stared at Luobai and asked, "What did you say? Ace was given to Marine by you?" Without waiting for Luobai to answer, Luo said in a deep voice, "Fire Fist Ace was captured by Luobai and handed over to Marine, and will soon be publicly executed at Naval Headquarters." Luo's idea is very simple. Since Luffy is also in conflict with Luobai, then find a way to join forces with him and escape from here. As for being his subordinate, as Luobai said, Rocco never thought about it. However, at this time, Luffy's face was full of anger, his fists clenched tightly, and he roared at Obai. I'm going to blow you away. Rubber machine gun. Under everyone's attention, Luffy aimed at Obai's position and threw his outstretched arms and thumped it. Luo was taken aback by Luffy's mindless behavior. He really couldn't understand, where did this Straw Hat Master come from, so that he dared to attack Obai first under such circumstances. Sand Crocodile, Blackbeard Teach, Fire Fist Ace, Gecko Moria. These guys were all defeated by Obai without exception. Even Luo, who has followed the route of the Straw Hat Pirates, is very clear. On the way of the Straw Hats, it can be said that they all followed Obai to eat ashes. If Obai didn't get rid of those guys first, the Straw Hats' voyage could never have been as smooth as it is now. It is precisely because of this. Even Luo didn't know whether to admire Luffy's courage or lament the stupidity of the Straw Hat owner. Under Luo's gaze, facing Luffy's rubber machine gun, Obai just turned his head lightly and easily dodged it. Luffy gritted his teeth and sped up a bit. However, at this moment, Obai raised his right hand and opened his palm, directly blocking Luffy's fist. Boom! After being hit by Luffy's fist, let alone being knocked flying, Obai's figure didn't even shake. Seeing this situation, Luffy was startled, and when he wanted to retract his arm. Unfortunately, before he could do this, Obai grabbed his fist directly. Obai, who was holding Luffy's fist, looked at the opponent with a smile, his right hand gradually exerted strength, and Luffy's fist made a creaking sound under the enormous force. Severe pain came, and Luffy's face became contorted. Seeing this situation, everyone in the Straw Hats no longer hesitated. The three-knife-style Zoro rushed towards Obai's location, Sanji attacked alongside him, and Brook also drew his rapier to attack Obai. Usopp and Frankie each aimed at Obai with their slingshots and the barrels on their arms. Even Chopper and Nami are attacking. Even though they knew Obai's strength was very strong, when Luffy was threatened, they could only fight against Obai. Seeing the actions of these guys, Obai's eyes flashed with luster. Immediately, he yanked his right hand hard and pulled Luffy in front of him. Before Luffy could react, Obai threw him out. Luffy's body slammed on Zoro, Sanji, and Brook. Under the blessing of Obai's enormous power, the four of them flew out to the position of the Straw Hats. Boom! A loud bang came, and everyone in the Straw Hats suddenly turned their backs. Usopp, Chopper, Frankie, Shalba was pressed down, acting as a human flesh pad to cushion the impact of Obai. Only Nami escaped at the last minute and survived. Looking at Luffy and the others who fell to the side in embarrassment, Nami looked like he had lingering fears. If possible, Nami really doesn't want to see the Straw Hats fight Obai. This guy's strength is obviously not what they can handle. But whether it was to get Kami back, or because Obai gave Ace to Marine, they were destined to not sit back and watch Luffy fight Obai alone. Seeing the embarrassed appearance of the Straw Hats, Luo immediately held his forehead helplessly. Originally, I was thinking of running away with the members of the pirates with his heart while the Straw Hats were fighting against Obai. Luo never thought that this Straw Hat Master is so useless. Can't even stop Obai for a moment. Is the Straw Hat Pirates too weak, or Obai is too strong? In fact, it is both. After all, most of the troubles the Straw Hats encountered along the way were solved by Obai first, allowing them to come to Sabayati Archipelago smoothly. But precisely because of this, the people of the Straw Hats are not as urgent to improve their strength as in the original plot. The strength is more than one step weaker than the timeline in the same period of the original story. What's more, let alone the Straw Hats in the same timeline of the original plot. Even the Straw Hats from 2 years later will have no chance of winning against the current Obai. Luo turned his eyes to Obai, and found that the other party was looking at him with a smile. Obai's eyes suddenly made Luo's heart skip a beat. For fear that Obai would suddenly hit him and be caught off guard. For Obai, through the rubber machine gun just now, he has successfully obtained all the abilities of Luffy. It is precisely because of this that Luffy has only one role left, and that is to appear on the execution platform with his brother. Make this summit war even more lively. Oh no, there is another role. For his partner, Luffy's life should be very important, right? Luo glanced at a certain orange-haired navigator out of the corner of his eye, and an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. But before that, you still need to get Luo's op fruit ability. Thinking of this, lightning flashed in Luo's eyes, and his figure instantly disappeared in place. The next moment, Luo suddenly appeared in front of Luo. Seeing Luo's sudden appearance, Luo's pupils shrank instantly. He took out his saber and pointed at Luo. Boom! Luo's saber collided with Luo's right leg. A violent roar erupted, and a wave of terror centered on the location of the two of them swept away in all directions. Feeling the power coming from his saber, Luo couldn't help being a little surprised. According to his guess, Luo's power should be far more than that. But why does Luo appear so weak? Yes, compared with Luo's guess, Luo is weak at this time. What he didn't know was that, in order to get his op fruit ability, Luo naturally couldn't kill him in a single encounter. However, now that the goal has been achieved, whether Luo is alive or not is not that important. Luo raised his right leg, aimed at Luo in front of him and kicked him fiercely. Boom! He kicked Zhang Luo's chest, causing his body to fly upside down uncontrollably. Along the way, the seats in the auction hall were smashed by Luo and scattered. It wasn't until he slammed into the wall of the auction hall that Luo's body was deeply embedded. Cough cough cough. Luo rubbed his chest painfully, only to feel that all the organs in his body were severely injured under this foot. Whether it's speed or strength, Luo's performance is beyond Luo's imagination. This also made Luo more puzzled. Although Luo's strength was so powerful, why didn't he show it immediately? Do you have other purposes, or do you just want to kill yourself? While Luo was thinking to himself, he saw Luo attacking him again and again. Luo's pupils contracted, and even when he raised his palm, an invisible force appeared from his palm, and directly enveloped him and Luo under Luo's control. Room. When the op fruit ability activates, Luo's body instantly changes position with a seat. Luo smashed the table and chair that came to him with one kick, and turned his head to look at Luo's position. I have to say, the effect of op fruit ability is still very good. Luo's use can also be said to be just right, but if it is only by means of this method, then he has no chance to live. Seeing Luo chasing after him again, Luo gritted his teeth and started frantically swapping seats with the seat. After dodging Luo's attacks many times, Luo couldn't help but start to gasp violently. This method took a huge toll on him. But Luo didn't dare to take Luo's attack hard, and could only use the op fruit ability to evade it. But if this continues, when his physical strength is exhausted, he will die at the hands of Luo. Thinking of this, Luo replaced the seat again, and then shouted loudly at the position of the Straw Hat group. Straw Hat Luffy, if you don't want to die in Luo's hands, come over and deal with him with me. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape until I die. After saying this, Luo started frantically using room to avoid Luo's pursuit. Luo actually knew very well that with Luo's terrifying speed, he could successfully catch up with him before he changed his position. But he couldn't understand why Luo didn't do this, but just liked to play with himself. He has the strength to kill him, but he just watched him dodge with all his strength. What is Luo waiting for? Luo doesn't know the answer to this question, and he can't even care about the answer to this question. All he can do is try his best to last longer in the hands of this monster Luo. Until he finds a chance to escape this auction house. Babo and the rest of the Heart Pirates, under Luo's instruction, had already fled here immediately, and Luo had no other concerns. After hearing Luo's shouts, everyone in the Straw Hats who just got up from the ground looked at each other. Without any hesitation, they rushed towards where Luo and Luo were. At the same time, Luffy shouted to Nami behind him. Nami, Usopp, Chopper, you guys go get Kami out. After we knock this guy out and rescue Kami, let's go and rescue Ace together. After hearing this, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper looked at each other and ran directly towards the fish tank where Kami was. Among the three things Luffy said, it is a bit reliable to rescue Kami. As for flying Luo and saving Ace from Marine, is this really something their Straw Hats can do? When the three of Nami went to rescue Kami, they only heard the voice of an intellectual big sister shouting. Second flower bloom. In an instant, countless palms grew from the ground, directly blocking them. Robin, with his arms crossed, looked at them with a smile and said, "Sorry, you can't cross this road." Usopp gritted his teeth, picked up the slingshot in his hand and shot it. Finger pistol. Boom. The bullet fired by Usopp was hit by Khalifa's finger pistol and exploded in the air. It's those CP9 moves. Seeing this situation, Usopp immediately remembered what happened in the Seven Waters. If it wasn't for those CP9 members who were hit hard by obai beforehand. If the Straw Hats want to defeat them successfully, it is impossible to be so easy. Ignoring the surprise of the timid trio, Khalifa pushed the glasses on the bridge of her nose and asked indifferently, "What to do with these guys?" Well, hearing this, Robin pondered for a moment, then smiled. Apart from this woman, no one else matters. Khalifa and Perona pouted. Of course they knew why Robin would exclude Nami alone. After all, I have been with Luobai for so long, so I naturally understand Luobai's character and behavior. Not even the Marine Vice Admiral named Gion, Luobai, let alone Nami, who is also a pirate. Although Nami didn't understand why Robin would say such a thing. But after hearing that the other party would not hurt his life, he couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief in his heart. However, if they want to hurt Usopp and Chopper, Nami will never sit idly by. Nami took a deep breath and immediately took out the weather stick. If you don't let it go, then you can only go to war. As Nami's voice fell, Chopper on the side also shattered the blue wave ball and transformed into another form. At this moment, Robin suddenly smiled, the flower fruit ability activated. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper all have two palms growing on their shoulders. Control them so they can't attack. At the same time, Perona used the ghost fruit ability, and the negative ghost penetrated the bodies of the three of them, causing both Nami and Chopper to fall to the ground in frustration. Only Usopp, which is itself extremely negative, does the negative ghost not work. However, Khalifa raised her slender right index finger and aimed at Usopp's head. Finger pistol. Boom. At the last moment, Usopp instinctively turned his head to the side, finger pistol rubbed his face and shot. Usopp sensed a tinge of pain, and reached out and touched it, and found that his hands were already covered with blood. This made Usopp's body tremble uncontrollably. Do Luffy and Zoro really have a chance of winning against Luobai? At this moment, a flying figure answered the doubts in Usopp's heart. Boom! A loud bang came. Usopp saw Sanji fall heavily on the ground, and the surrounding seats were smashed by Sanji. And Sanji himself, hugging his right leg tightly, let out a painful roar from his mouth. Sanji! Luffy's shout came, and the words were full of worry. I'm fine. Sanji took the initiative to stop Luffy and the others from worrying about him, for fear that his state would affect the fight between them and Luobai. But Usopp could clearly see that Sanji's forehead was covered in cold sweat because of the pain. Sanji, who is obviously the best at using his legs to deal with the enemy, was kicked like this by Luobai. What kind of monster is that guy Luobai? Sanji lying on the ground was full of pain, and his right leg was about to be abolished just by kicking Luobai recklessly. This battle is doomed from the beginning. While Sanji and Usopp were quickly thinking about what they should do to make a successful run, a green algae head directly hit Sanji, who was lying on the ground. Boom! Under the blessing of Luobai's terrifying power, Sanji almost couldn't help crying. The physical pain Sanji can endure, but Zoro's three knives almost turned him into a she-male. Green algae head, you almost made me die in the future, do you know? Zoro didn't answer, just coughed, and a mouthful of blood spat out of his mouth. Seeing this, Sanji said nervously, "How are you?" Zoro swallowed the blood surging in his throat and shook his head. "I'm fine." With mutual support, the two stood up at the same time. But one is that his right leg was almost destroyed, and the other is that both knives were broken by Luobai's punch. Only what I got from my teacher and a word can be preserved under Luobai's fist. Before they could go to help Luffy and the others, they only saw Luobai, as if he had finally had enough, his fists began to smash at Luffy and the others. Every time a punch is dropped, a figure will be knocked upside down and fly out. Luffy, Luo, Brook, Shalba and others all fell heavily to the ground, smashing the ground into many deep pits. Just when Luobai wanted to kill the nearest Xiaoba, an invisible force suddenly appeared and enveloped the entire auction hall at an extremely fast speed. Feeling this conqueror's haki, Luobai turned his gaze to a wall. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Finally, can't sit still, are you going to show up? Remnants of the old days, Deputy Captain of the Roger Pirates, Pluton Silver Rayleigh. Facing the Conqueror's haki released by Rayleigh, Luobai did not hesitate to vent the Conqueror's haki he owned. The two collided, and a violent roar erupted. Boom! In this terrifying confrontation, the surrounding seats were directly lifted up and scattered in this auction. In just a few breaths, Rayleigh's Conqueror's haki collapsed directly in front of Luobai. Although many people present didn't know exactly what move this was, they could also sense that this sudden appearance was defeated by Luobai in the confrontation. Luobai's right fingers moved slightly, and the long sword scattered on the ground aimed at a position on the wall and quickly attacked. Boom! Under the control of the magnetic fruit's ability, these sabers and long swords directly penetrated the wall and swept towards the figure behind. Facing Luobai's attack, Rayleigh drew his sword from his waist and slammed the weapon controlled by Luobai. After seeing Rayleigh's figure, Xiaoba climbed out of the deep pit with surprises on his face. Rayleigh, how will you be here? While resisting Luobai's attack, Rayleigh looked at Xiaoba and said with a smile. Long time no see, little 8. Hachi looked at Rayleigh and let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunate to have you, Rayleigh, otherwise, we'd be really dead here. Rayleigh smiled and didn't answer, but he had the same idea as Xiaoba. Luffy also crawled out of the deep hole he smashed under him, looking at Hachi and asking. Xiaoba, who is this uncle? Without waiting for little 8 to answer, Luo, who was on the side, spoke first. Pluton Silver Rayleigh, former vice captain of the Roger Pirates. The deputy captain of the Roger Pirates. After hearing Luo's words, Luffy's eyes instantly brightened, if it wasn't for the wrong time and occasion. I'm afraid he's running up to Rayleigh to ask something. Luo Yi sat on the ground, rubbed his chest, which was constantly experiencing severe pain, and sighed. It seems that we have survived successfully. Hearing this, Luffy reacted instantly, clenching his fists immediately. Hey, it's not over yet. I'm going to beat this guy. Luo looked at Luffy in front of him with a look as if he was mentally retarded. Does this guy really know what he is talking about? Beat Luobai. If it wasn't for Rayleigh's sudden appearance, if they intervened in this battle, they would have died in Luobai's hands. Or, what are your cards? Luo looked up and down at Luffy in front of him and asked. Do you have the strength to beat him? Luffy didn't hesitate at all, and was eager to try it. No matter what, I will never give up. Well, Luo is now sure that there is definitely something wrong with this straw hat Luffy's brain circuit. Is this something you can do without giving up? However, at this moment, Rayleigh suddenly looked at Luffy and said with a smile. Okay Luffy, now you are not the opponent of this Luobai. Without waiting for Luffy to respond, he looked directly at Luobai and said. Luobai, although I don't know why you want to shoot at Luffy and the others, but I have some relationship with Luffy, so I can't stand idly by. Then, can you give me face and let this fight end here? After hearing this, let alone other people, even Luffy himself was stunned. Even he doesn't know how he got involved with the Roger Pirates co-captain. Rayleigh didn't mean to explain for the time being, just glanced at the straw hat on Luffy's head, his eyes full of nostalgia. Luobai is of course well aware of Rayleigh's thoughts. He even had a guess that the reason why Rayleigh appeared in this auction was because he wanted to see this Luffy who inherited Roger's will with his own eyes. About Luffy, I'm afraid the red-haired Shanks told Rayleigh a long time ago. And when Luffy's bounty first appeared, this Pluton Rayleigh had already noticed him. After all, Rayleigh's old crush, Shaki, is the business of buying and selling information in the Sabayati archipelago. As for giving him face, Ning is also a face fruit person, right? Luobai smiled and looked at the opposite Rayleigh, his eyebrows raised slightly. Give you a face, because you were Roger's deputy. Or your title of Pluton. Or, the remnants of the old era. When the words fell, the smile on Rayleigh's face froze instantly, a ray of light flashed in his eyes, and he looked at Luobai and said lightly. Young man, don't be too arrogant. We old fellows aren't old enough to lift knives. Luobai laughed when he heard the words. Do you still call young people when you are not angry? The times have changed, my lord. An old guy like you, who doesn't hide away honestly, dares to show up. After hearing Luo Bai's words, Rayleigh's face suddenly became extremely gloomy. Although the strength is not as good as the peak period of the year. But no matter what, Rayleigh thinks that in his own identity, he still has a bit of a thin face. But he never thought that Luo Bai would be so disrespectful to himself. You really think you can't lift a knife, do you? Rayleigh's body burst into a strong momentum in an instant, raising his saber and slashing at the weapon controlled by Luo Bai in front of him. Boom! As soon as the sword went down, these saber and long sword suddenly broke apart. After doing this, Rayleigh turned his head to look at Luo Bai, and pointed his saber directly at him. How about, young man? As the former deputy captain of the Roger Pirates, are you satisfied with this strength? Luo Bai smiled and nodded, looking at him with great interest. Satisfied, but not for your strength, but for your identity. Since you are the vice captain of the Roger Pirates, let's board the execution platform of Naval Headquarters with Roger's son. Rayleigh frowned deeply, looked at Luo Bai in surprise and asked. What do you mean? Luo Bai pretended to be suddenly enlightened and said. Oh, I forgot, you, the vice captain, don't know Ace's true identity, right? Roger had only told Garp that he had a baby before turning himself into Marine. Even Rayleigh, who has been with him for decades, doesn't even know about it. Looking at the weird smile on Luo Bai's face, Rayleigh was a little unpredictable for a while. He didn't understand what Luo Bai's words meant. What is Roger's son, and what does Ace's true identity mean? Luo Bai looked at Rayleigh with a half smile and said. It's more appropriate for the straw hat Luffy you want to protect to explain this to you. Rayleigh turned his attention to Luffy and asked in a deep voice. Luffy, what did Luo Bai mean? Feeling Rayleigh's gaze, Luffy didn't hesitate. After all, he wanted to save Ace from Naval Headquarters. And since Rayleigh is the deputy captain of the Roger Pirates, should he also help him in this matter? Ace is Roger's son. It's just that he never wanted to admit it. After getting the exact answer from Luffy's mouth, Rayleigh's pupils suddenly widened, and his eyes were full of disbelief. That guy Roger, does he even have a son? No wonder. No wonder after Ace was handed over to Marine by Luo Bai, Marine would rather risk a fight with the Whitebeard pirates than choose to publicly execute him at Naval Headquarters. The Marine guys not only want to get rid of the Whitebeard pirates, but also want to use the identity of Ace to end the era of the great pirates. Rayleigh got it, everything figured out. The Marine guys, the reason why they didn't announce Ace's true identity right away. I'm afraid it is to avoid the remnants of the Roger pirates like myself, who will participate in this war, right? Shish. Rayleigh raised his saber and pointed at Luo Bai, who was facing him, and asked with a gloomy face. Luo Bai, what's your purpose? Give Ace to Marine and now tell me Ace's true identity. What do you want to do in this war? Rayleigh wasn't a brainless guy like Luffy, and he found a lot of doubts right away. Obviously handing Ace to Marine and letting Marine go to war with the Whitebeard pirates will not do him any good at all. The only benefit is perhaps the title of 7 Warlords of the Sea. But with Luo Bai killing celestial dragons, he will soon become a thorn in the eyes of Marine and the world government. In this way, it can even be said that Luo Bai got nothing. But he did so. Or Luo Bai simply wants to see the world in chaos. Or, he just has a bigger plan. Luo Bai looked at Rayleigh with a smile and said indifferently. Would you believe it if I said I just wanted to have a good time? Rayleigh snorted and said coldly. Whatever your purpose, you have achieved it now. I will inform all the remnants of the Roger Pirates, this war, we will also participate in it. From Rayleigh's point of view, Luo Bai had such a purpose in telling himself Ace's true identity. It's just a pity that Rayleigh guessed wrong. Luo Bai shook his head regretfully. I didn't tell you to leave like this. Rayleigh frowned, his face became more gloomy, and there was a fierce anger in his chest. Luo Bai, you just killed the celestial dragons, the distance between Naval Headquarters and Sabayati Archipelago. The Marine Admiral will be here soon. If you don't plan to leave, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave. Also, isn't it your goal to let us, the remnants of the Roger Pirates, participate in the war that will come soon? Now that the goal has been achieved, what else do you want to do? When Luobai heard the words, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and a strange smile appeared on his face. With arms stretched out, all iron weapons on the ground are suspended in the air. I do want the remnants of the Roger pirates to get involved. However, for this purpose, wouldn't it be possible to give you to Marine too? Under the control of Luobai, the iron weapons suspended in the air quickly attacked the location of Rayleigh, Luo, Luffy and others. Hearing this, Rayleigh's pupils suddenly widened, and then his eyes were filled with thick anger. Since you are so confident, let me see if you have the strength. Having said that, in the face of Luobai's move, Rayleigh didn't dare to be careless at all. While resisting the various weapons in front of him, he shouted at Luffy. Luffy, you go away with your buddies first. It's really dangerous to wait until the Marine Admiral arrives. However, what made Rayleigh annoyed was that, instead of leaving, Luffy directly entered the second gear and took the initiative to charge towards Luobai's position. I said, I'm going to shoot this nasty guy away. Seeing Luffy's actions, Rayleigh's breathing suddenly stagnated. He really didn't expect that under such circumstances, Luffy would be able to do such a thing. Even if you hate Luobai very much for giving ace to Marine, don't you think about the gap between yourself and him? At this moment, Rayleigh even doubted whether Shanks had made the right choice. Not to mention Rayleigh, even the members of the Straw Hats were stunned. Usopp stared blankly at Luffy rushing towards Luobai, and asked dumbly at Zoro and Sanji beside him. How to do? Zoro took a deep breath and picked up the only handful and a piece of text left in his hand. What else? Can we leave the captain alone? After speaking, without waiting for the others to make a move, they rushed directly to Luobai's location. Brook did the same, but Sanji spoke to Usopp to Nami before going to assist them. Usopp, Miss Nami, be prepared to leave at any time. We can't possibly be Luobai's opponents. Watching their actions, Nami gritted his teeth and complained. That guy Luffy really likes to play tricks as always. Frankie responded with a wry smile. He's always been like this, hasn't he? Frankie raised his left cannon and aimed at Luobai, ready to support them at any time. Looking at the behavior of the Straw Hats, Luo finally came to his senses. The words just now brought a great impact to Luo. Ace is the son of Roger, the Pirate King, and Luobai has a big plan. Now seeing that Luffy and the others are desperately going to fight Luobai, Luokai doesn't plan to die with them. While everyone's attention was on the Straw Hats and Rayleigh, Luo started running. While Luo was running away, Luobai's face suddenly became very strange in the face of the active attack of the Straw Hats. Luobai didn't hesitate either. Stepping on his feet, his body instantly appeared in front of Luffy. Raised his fist, aimed it at the head of the Pirate King and smashed it down. Boom, crack. All Luffy can do is to raise his arms at the last moment, trying to use this method to reduce the damage caused by Luobai's fist. However, how could Luobai's terrifying power be resisted in this way? With one punch, Luffy flew upside down. Rolling in the air, Luffy spit out a large mouthful of blood, his arms drooping weakly. Seeing this situation, Chopper, the ship doctor, suddenly shouted. Luffy. Chopper could tell that Luffy's arms had been directly broken by Luobai's punch. Robin, Khalifa, and Perona stopped Chopper, who was trying to catch Luffy, so he could only watch Luffy fall to the ground. What? Luffy rolled back and forth painfully on the ground, his face contorted from the intense pain. At the same time, Zoro, Sanji, Brook, Shalba, and even Frankie, who rushed up later, were beaten by Luobai easily and miserably. Seeing this, Rayleigh burst out to support them. However, in the end, it was a step too late, and he could only watch Shalba's chest pierced by the saber controlled by Luobai. Laugh. The light of the sword burst forth, and the blood spurted out. Killing one person with a wave of his hand, Luobai didn't even change the smile on his face. In fact, Rayleigh's guess is not entirely correct. Luobai really wants to let the remnants of the Roger pirates also participate in the Summit War. But his goal is definitely not just the remnants of the Roger pirates. If Luobai handed Rayleigh to Marine and let Rayleigh accompany Ace to be executed, whether it is the remnants of the Roger pirates or the Red Hair pirates of Shanks, you will not miss this war. With this Straw Hat Luffy there, the Revolutionary Army will never stand idly by like in the original plot. In this way, in just a Summit War, Obai will be able to gain the abilities of their top powerhouses. Obai, how could he miss such a good opportunity? The Summit War, which is far more powerful than the original plot, is about to begin. Little 8. After seeing the fish-man Shalba being manipulated by Obai to pierce his chest with a saber, the members of the Straw Hats couldn't help shouting in alarm. Even Rayleigh, who faced most of Obai's offensive, had a deep anger on his face. You must know that for Rayleigh, Shalba saved himself once. Now that Shalba was killed by Obai, how could Rayleigh not be angry? The only exception, I am afraid there is only Nami with long orange hair. While everyone else was angry at Hachi's death, Nami's eyes flashed with joy. Nami has never forgotten what hateful things Shalba and Evil Dragon did in their hometown. Even Belmere, who adopted her and her sister Nakigo, was killed by the dragon. How could the hatred in Nami's heart dissipate so easily? Obai, you bloody fool. Rayleigh's eyes were red due to anger. He cut off the weapon in front of him with a sword, and charged towards Obai with a roar. Facing Rayleigh who was attacking him, Obai not only did not dodge, but took the initiative to greet him. Armament Haki appeared, wrapped Obai's fists, aimed at Rayleigh's head and slammed it down. Boom! A violent roar resounded throughout the auction hall, and the powerful fluctuation swept the surrounding seats up and down. Obai, you are such a thief. Ace didn't provoke you, you handed Ace capture to Marine. Shalba didn't provoke you, but you killed him directly. A guy like you will pay for it sooner or later. Rayleigh couldn't understand. Obviously they had never had an intersection with Obai. Why did Obai target them like this? However, Obai's eyes flashed after hearing Rayleigh's words. He raised his right leg and kicked him fiercely. Rayleigh put his saber in front of him, trying to block Obai's blow. However, at the moment when the two collided, under Obai's terrifying power, Rayleigh's body fell back uncontrollably. Laugh. Rayleigh's legs left 2 scratches on the ground, and finally he stuck his sword on the ground. Only in this way can I stop the body from regressing. When Rayleigh looked up, he saw the mocking smile on Obai's face. Before he could say anything, Obai spoke directly. I really don't want a face. This kind of thing, you can only do it to others, but if anyone else does this to you, are those people too cruel? They are all pirates, are you more noble than others? With Obai's voice falling, his figure appeared directly above Rayleigh's head. The right leg was raised high, and like a battle axe, it slashed down towards Rayleigh below. Boom! At the last moment, Rayleigh still raised the sword in his hand above him. However, under Obai's terrifying power, Rayleigh's body directly pressed a deep hole into the ground, and fell to one knee uncontrollably. Without waiting for Rayleigh to make any extra moves, Obai kicked him hard on the head. Boom! There was a loud bang, and Rayleigh was deeply embedded in the ground. Obai has always looked down on people like Rayleigh, who is obviously just a pirate, but in the end, everything he does is just to change the world. All of you have chosen to go out to sea to become pirates, and still don't do what you pirates should do. You have to put gold on your face and say it is for the sake of more people. The original Roger slaughtered the entire kingdom just for someone else to say a word to his crew. After that, the era of the great pirates was opened, resulting in countless deaths at the hands of the pirates. How, this can still be washed into a good person? Obai looked at Rayleigh who climbed out of the pit, his body covered with dust, and twitched the corners of his mouth. Are all of you Roger pirates as hypocritical as you? There was a flash of murder in Rayleigh's eyes, and his face was full of anger. Being exposed like this by Obai, where does he put the face of Pluton? Rayleigh raised his saber and slashed at Obai, and the slashes slashed towards Obai's location. Laugh. The ground was slashed by Rayleigh's slash, revealing the power contained in it. While using this method to keep Obai from approaching, he shouted at the location of everyone in the Straw Hats. Luffy, take your buddies away. Stop being headstrong. Continuing to stay here will only put you in crisis. This time, Luffy, whose arms were broken by Obai's kick, finally became honest. He has already understood that he is definitely not Obai's opponent at this time. Not to mention flying the opponent, whether or not he can escape from the opponent alive depends on whether Rayleigh is strong enough. Luffy didn't hesitate, when even the comrades started fleeing. However, before they could take 2 steps, the slashes slammed directly in front of them. These slashes were slashed by Rayleigh, but Luobai kicked them in front of them. Boom! Seeing that the escape route was blocked, the Straw Hats hesitated again, not knowing what to do next. Not only because of Luobai's blocking, but also because Xiao Ba's body is still on the ground, and even Kami is also in the fish tank at this moment. Seeing this, Rayleigh gritted his teeth, and the movements in his hands became more violent and frantic. Don't worry, you just get out of here. Xiao Ba's body and Kami, I will take them all. After hearing these words, the talents of the Straw Hats finally had no worries at all, and ran frantically towards the gate of the auction house. In fact, they all knew that it was very difficult for Rayleigh to deal with Luobai, and whether he could escape from Luobai's hands was a matter for 2 people to discuss. Not to mention stealing Kami from Luobai. But the current Straw Hats obviously have no time to delve into this issue. Robin, Khalifa, and Perona pulled Kami out of the tank. Khalifa holds the collar of the Shalulia Palace in her hand. Then he chased after the Straw Hats. Although they don't know why Luobai is targeting the Straw Hats, but since Luobai has already done it, they certainly don't allow the other party to run away. Luobai doesn't plan to continue entanglement with Rayleigh. Luffy's importance is obviously much higher than Rayleigh. Seeing Rayleigh stand in his way again, Luobai didn't hesitate. A flash of lightning flashed in his eyes. He appeared directly beside Rayleigh, raised his right leg, and kicked the opponent's head with a bang. At the last moment, Rayleigh managed to sideways with the fighting instinct he had developed over the years, although he could not completely escape. But still let Luobai's right leg fall on his shoulder, not on his head. Boom! There was a loud noise, and Rayleigh's body was directly kicked by Luobai's terrifying power and slammed into the wall. This already riddled auction house began to collapse directly. And before it collapsed completely, Luobai easily got out of it. Boom! The moment Luobai walked out of the auction hall, this huge auction hall was completely a wreck. The huge sound resounded in the sky, and the dust flew everywhere. Luobai stood in front of the wreckage of the auction site, pushed the gold wire glasses on the bridge of his nose, and looked at the sailors who surrounded the site with interest. Marine Admiral, haven't you arrived yet? Seeing Luobai appear, a Marine colonel glared at Luobai and asked. Luobai, as the 7 warlords of the sea, he did such a thing, don't you know the consequences of killing celestial dragons? Luobai looked at the Colonel Marine with interest, and chuckled softly. Do you know what you look like? Colonel Marine frowned deeply and asked gloomily. What do you want to say? Loyal dog. For the loyal dogs of the world government and celestial dragons. The words fell, and the expressions of the Marines in the scene changed greatly, especially the Colonel Marine who questioned Luobai just now, and his expression was extremely gloomy. As Marine, the most difficult to hear others say that he is the loyal dog of the world government and celestial dragons. Especially, after he's just made the stance of a loyal dog. Colonel Marine was furious, pulled out his saber and pointed at Luobai, who was facing him. Luobai, no matter what your reasons for doing this, you can't escape. Hearing this, Luobai looked at each other with a smile. Did I say I was going to run away? Escape. Since he came to this world an activated cheat, Luobai has never done such a thing as running. What's more, the big disturbance in Sabayati Archipelago was originally planned by Luobai. Colonel Marine's expression was extremely gloomy, but he did not lose his mind to the point of giving an order to let his Marines attack Luobai. Luobai looked around and found that the so-called supernovae had gathered here, and seemed very interested in what happened here. Originally, I just wanted to watch the fun, but I didn't expect Luobai to make such a big noise. Kill 2 celestial dragons and enslave 1 celestial dragons. This kind of crazy behavior, let alone seeing it with their own eyes, they have never even heard of it. Originally, I was thinking of running away after watching the lively. In the end, I didn't expect to be surrounded by all these Marines. The Colonel Marine's mind is very simple, he wants to wait until Marine Admiral arrives to catch all the pirates present. At this moment, there was a sudden movement in the wreckage behind Luobai, and Rayleigh rushed out of it. At this time, Rayleigh looked extremely embarrassed. His clothes were tattered, and his body was covered with dust. Even at the corners of his mouth, there was a faint trace of bloodline. Cough cough cough. Rayleigh waved his hand to disperse the dust in front of him. After seeing that Luffy and his straw hats failed to escape successfully, they were surrounded by Marines. Rayleigh's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Why so fast? Rayleigh knew very well that with the distance between naval headquarters and Subjugating archipelago, it wouldn't take long for Marine Admiral to get here. If you waste any more time and wait until the Marine Admiral really arrives. Not to mention that Luffy and his straw hats successfully evacuated, even his Pluton, I am afraid there is no chance to escape. After all, that guy Obai has been eyeing him all the time. With that in mind, Rayleigh looked directly at Luffy and shouted. Luffy, don't worry about it, get out. Only by rushing out will you have a chance to do other things. When Luffy heard this, he thought of Ace, who was about to be publicly executed at naval headquarters. He immediately gritted his teeth and led the Straw Hats to charge the Navy in front of them, trying to break through the blockade. The other supernovas did not hesitate when they saw this, and directly chose to join forces with the Straw Hats to start breaking through. After all, they don't want to face Marine Admiral at a time like this. If that Colonel Marine didn't want to fight Obai, then deal with these supernovas, but there is nothing to hesitate. Colonel Marine raised his saber and roared. Stop them. As long as they don't escape our blockade, they won't be able to escape until Marine Admiral support arrives. Yes, this Colonel Marine took the lead in fighting with the pirates in the encirclement. The rest of the Navy did not hesitate at all, and immediately began to fight against the pirates. As the Colonel Marine said, as long as they hold out until the Marine Admiral arrives, they have won. Although the strength of the supernovas far surpassed the Marines in front of them, when the opponent tried their best to stop them, the supernovas were actually blocked for a while. Especially after the battle just now, the members of the Straw Hats have already suffered a lot of damage. The combat power has been greatly reduced. Seeing this situation, Rayleigh's face became even more ugly. When they tried to help Luffy break through Marine's siege, they were blocked by Obai. Rayleigh glared at Obai and asked with a low growl. Obai, what on earth do you want to do? Obai chuckled lightly. Have a good look at it, can't you? Rayleigh didn't talk nonsense to Obai, just raised his sword and stabbed Obai. Facing Rayleigh's attack, Obai shook his head slightly. Give you a chance, you are useless. Shish. With a flash of blue light, Obai's figure instantly disappeared, leaving Rayleigh's sword in the air. Seeing this situation, Rayleigh's pupils shrank instantly, and an ominous premonition emerged in his heart. The next moment, Obai's fist slammed into Rayleigh's head. Boom! With one punch, Rayleigh's body flew out, and after rolling dozens of laps, he finally fell heavily to the ground. Seeing the conflict between Obai and Rayleigh, although the Colonel Marine could not understand the situation, but still involuntarily excited. Fight! It's better to fight to lose both. When the Marine Admiral arrives, none of you bloody pirates can get away. Obai's offensive didn't end there. Thunderfruit's ability was revealed secretly and appeared directly in front of Rayleigh. With a dazed head, Rayleigh only heard a faint roar in his ears, and saw Obai's figure come into view. Rayleigh didn't hesitate, and rolled directly to one side. Compared with his life, his face was not so important. Boom! Just as Rayleigh rolled aside, Obai's right foot slammed down as if wiping his face. The ground cracked inch by inch, and the sand and gravel splashed directly from under its feet. Feeling the intensity of Obai's power, Rayleigh's heart suddenly sank. I'm afraid, this time it's really going to be planted. Just after Rayleigh jumped up, a blue light flashed in his eyes. Under Rayleigh's gaze, all he could see was his right hand, which was holding the saber, flying in the air. This Pluton's arm was directly cut off by Obai's quick fruit-cutting ability. Hiss! Feeling the piercing pain from the shoulder and the broken arm, Rayleigh's face instantly turned extremely pale, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. Uncle Rayleigh, rubber machine gun. When Luffy saw Rayleigh's broken arm, his eyes were split, and he entered the second gear in an instant, sending all the sailors in front of him flying. Obai, who had done all this, didn't even get the slightest bloodline on his palms. Obai laughed lightly as he looked at Rayleigh, who was in pain. I gave you a chance, but unfortunately you didn't take it. I could have cut off your head, but in the end it only made you break an arm. I'm still too soft-hearted. Looking at Luobai, who shook his head and sighed, Rayleigh almost couldn't help cursing. Are you soft-hearted? Are you trying to save my life and let the rest of the Roger pirates show up, and even Shanks are your target? At this moment, a very wretched voice suddenly sounded. Oh, dignified Pluton had his arm cut off. It's really scary. Luobai looked at the dazzling figure in the high place, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Kizaru, sparkling fruit ability, I will accept it. Luobai was not surprised by the arrival of Kizaru, and even expected this situation. After all, isn't it very suspicious that a guy who usually just thinks about fishing and paddling takes the initiative to come to Subjugating archipelago at this time? Even if Kizaru wasn't undercover, he definitely didn't want Luffy to fall into Marine's hands at a time like this. The public execution of one of Ace's grandsons has already made Marine worry about whether Garp will do anything to betray justice. If you add a Luffy, there is no guarantee what the Marine hero will choose. But, does this have anything to do with Luobai? What Luobai wants to see is to make this summit war more lively. It is best to get the ability of all the top powerhouses at one time. At that time, Luobai doesn't need to hide anymore, really, can have no scruples. Kizaru landed on the ground from the air, looked at Luobai, who was opposite him, and sighed, with a single voice. Luobai, what a surprise. I thought, after the world government made you replace Crocodile as the new 7 warlords of the sea. At least you can guarantee that you will be on our Marines' side in the next war. But now it seems that you never intended to join forces with our Marine to deal with the Whitebeard pirates. As he spoke, a look of regret appeared on Kizaru's face. He is not like those ignorant guys who think Luobai's strength is blown out by the world government. Now all Marine executives are very clear, Luobai at least has a power that can be comparable to Marine Admiral. If Luobai chose to side with Marine in the war with the Whitebeard pirates, that Marine should have an easier time dealing with the Whitebeard pirates. It's just a pity that Luobai was doomed to stand against Marine from the moment he did something like killing celestial dragons. Without waiting for Luobai to answer, Kizaru turned his attention to Rayleigh, who was beside him. Looking at the smooth scar on Rayleigh's shoulder, and the arm on the ground still clutching the saber. A wretched smile appeared on Kizaru's face. Pluton Silver Rayleigh, who has been hiding in the Subjugating archipelago for so long, only to have his arm cut off by Luobai just after he appeared. Rayleigh snorted and didn't answer, but his face became more and more difficult to look. The less anxious this guy Kizaru is, the more confident he is. In this way, I really want to be planted this time. Even Luffy, who inherited Roger's will, may not be able to escape from Marine's hands. Just when Kizaru was about to say something, Rayleigh felt a gust of awe, and Luobai's figure instantly disappeared in place. The next moment, Luobai, who suddenly appeared above Kizaru's head, raised his right leg and slashed at his head. Boom! As soon as he stepped down, Kizaru was kicked and flew upside down, destroying the nearby houses and trees beyond recognition. Kizaru got up from the wreckage of the house, shook his dazed head, wiped the dust off his body, looked at Luobai and sighed. Luobai, are you so anxious to start a war with me? Luobai took off his glasses, pinned them to his chest, rubbed his hands together, and tucked his hair behind his head. The original gentle appearance disappeared, replaced by handsome and tough. In an instant, there was a dramatic change. Stop talking nonsense, Kizaru, there shouldn't be much of your time to waste, right? Kizaru shrugged. Since you're in such a hurry, it's not easy for me to refuse, right? As he spoke, Kizaru raised his right hand and pointed his index finger to Luobai's head. Light began to gather on his fingers. The yellow light reflected in Kizaru's eyes, and a wretched smile appeared on his face again. The next moment, a beam of terrifying power shot towards Luobai's location. Call out. Facing Kizaru's attack, Luobai not only did not dodge, but a strange look flashed in his eyes. He raised his fist and smashed into the light. Boom! With one punch, Luobai directly changed the direction of the light, and in the blink of an eye, the light suddenly landed on the position of the supernova and the Marines. Boom! An explosion sounded, and the nearby supernova and Marines were affected by this force. Under the threat of this light, the supernovas who were about to break through the Marines' encirclement could only retreat again. Seeing this situation, Kizaru's face suddenly became very strange. he looked up and down Luobai and asked. Luobai, what's your purpose in doing this? We've already fought against us Marine, do you still want to help us deal with these pirates? The supernovas also glared at Luobai, if they didn't know that Luobai's strength is very powerful. These supernovas may not be able to help but do it to him. Luobai, with sharp eyes and hair back, said with a smile. If you want to understand it this way, there is no problem. By the way, as Marine Admiral, you should know the identities of these pirates, right? Kizaru said with a smile on his face, calmly. I do not understand what you mean. Luobai looked at Kizaru meaningfully. Really, no one else matters, but the name Monkey D. Luffy should not be unfamiliar to you Marines, right? Kizaru's face changed when he heard the words, feeling Luobai's teasing gaze, and finally said solemnly. Luobai, no matter what your purpose is, at least it's not right now. Of course Kizaru knows who Luobai is talking about. Grandson of Marine hero Garp Vice Admiral, son of Revolutionary Army leader Monkey D. Drago, Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy's identity, almost all Marine executives are very clear. Even though Kizaru doesn't want to worship Garp Vice Admiral like Aokiji does, he knows how much prestige this Marine hero has among Marines. If Garp Vice Admiral betrays Marine because of the capture of Luffy, the impact on Marine will be too great. At least, Kizaru dare not gamble. Seeing Kizaru's reaction, Luobai's eyes flickered, and he disappeared in place in an instant. Seeing this, Kizaru's pupils shrank slightly, and Sparkling Fruit's abilities showed, appearing directly in front of Luffy. The next moment, Luobai's fist, wrapped in terrifying power, aimed at Luffy's head and slammed it down. And Kizaru helped Luffy block the blow at the same time. Boom! The fists collided together, and a violent roar suddenly resounded through the sky. A terrifying wave struck, causing the nearby supernova and the Marines to retreat a little involuntarily. Luobai glanced deeply at Luffy behind Kizaru and said deliberately, Kizaru, it seems that your Marine Admiral's duty is not only to protect celestial dragons, but also protect pirates. The voice fell, and the scene suddenly fell into an extremely strange silence. Whether it was the supernova or Marine present, or the residents of Subjugating Archipelago who were watching, they all looked at Kizaru in amazement. For a while, I couldn't understand why Kizaru would do such a thing. And Kizaru, who is the party involved, was put up by Luobai with a single sentence. His brain was running fast, and he couldn't think of a suitable way to break the game in a short period of time. At this moment, Robin on the side echoed in a very timely manner. After all, he is the hero of Marine, the grandson of Garp Vice Admiral. As Garp Vice Admiral's descendant, Kizaru Admiral should protect his grandson, right? Boil. Kizaru's eyes under the sunglasses suddenly widened, and the eyeballs almost popped out. And Luobai also looked at Robin and raised his eyebrows, his eyes full of admiration. Seeing this, Robin raised his chin arrogantly, and then smiled, as if he didn't know the impact of his words. Even though she has been rewarded by the world government since she was a child, Robin has been able to live in peace and stability. Her black belly and wisdom are certainly not comparable to ordinary people. After Robin said this sentence, it means that there is no room for this matter to turn around. After all, the reporters around here are now filming and recording the situation frantically with their eyes shining. They know better than ordinary people, once this kind of thing is exposed, what a huge impact it will have. So, this Straw Hat, Luffy, is Marine Garp's grandson. A Marine hero who taught a pirate, and even Marine Admiral is protecting the pirate. Is such Marine really just? Sure enough, the most important thing in this world is the background. Hearing the chatter coming from his ears, Kizaru's face instantly became extremely ugly. He really didn't expect that it was originally to prevent Luffy from falling into Marine's hands and prevent the situation from further escalating. However, with the cooperation of Luobai and Robin in just a few words, the development of the matter has completely escaped his control. If you want to let Luffy go, let alone Marine Admiral, even the entire Marine will be greatly affected. Even, the people of the whole world will no longer trust the Marine. If this happens, it is far more serious than Garp's betrayal of Marine. In this case, Kizaru's eyes changed, and he suddenly turned around and kicked Luffy's body. Boom! Luffy. When he stepped down, Under the terrifying power of Kizaru, Luffy flew out like a cannonball. After rolling dozens of times in the air, it finally fell heavily to the ground. Originally, Luffy was seriously injured in the battle just now, and now he was knocked unconscious by Kizaru's kick. Seeing Luffy lying on the ground silently, Kizaru waved at the Colonel Marine and said solemnly, "Arrest him. For us Marines, no matter what background these pirates have, we must not let them go." After hearing this, the faces of the Marines finally recovered, and the residents of Subjugating Archipelago who were watching were also relieved. Only those reporters had pity on their faces. If Kizaru lets Luffy go, that's the real big news. But now it's not bad. Garp Vice Admiral, a Marine hero, has raised a grandson who is a pirate. If this kind of news is published in the newspaper, the sales of the newspaper will be very high, right? After giving the order, Kizaru turned his head to look at Obai, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. If it wasn't for this guy, how could things have gotten to this point? Kizaru jumped high, his arms crossed, and a dazzling light condensed on his fingers. 8 feet Joan Tomo. With Kizaru's loud shout, countless beams of light were fired at Luobai's location. Facing Kizaru's 8-footed Chong Tomo, Luobai's thoughts moved slightly, and several sabers were suspended directly in front of him. Under the control of the magnetic fruit's ability, these sabers are constantly waving, resisting the opponent's offensive. Seeing this situation, Kizaru didn't try to deal with Luobai again in this way. He clasped his hands together slightly, and a lightsaber appeared directly in his hands. Tiankong Cloud Sword. Shish. Sparkling fruit activated, Kizaru instantly appeared in front of Luobai, raised the Tiankong Cloud Sword in his hand and slashed at him. Looking at Kizaru, who was angry and embarrassed, Luobai raised his mouth slightly and threw his fists to fight with him. Luobai secretly felt a little pity while he kept throwing his fists at the Tiankong Cloud Sword in Kizaru's hand. In other words, now is not the time to reveal your abilities. Otherwise, Luobai really wants to use Sparkling Fruit's ability to create Tiankong Yunjian to fight Kizaru. 0. Watching others use their abilities, they are almost the same as their own, and even more skilled than themselves. What is this called? It's called a face-to-face Torin. While Luobai and Kizaru were fighting, the supernovas started to break through frantically. And Zoro, Sanji, Brook and other members of the Straw Hats tried their best to save the unconscious Luffy from Marine. Like them, there is also Rayleigh with a broken arm. Although the combat power has been greatly weakened due to the broken arm, in the face of these Marines, Rayleigh is still easy to deal with. Kizaru didn't seem to see it, he just focused on fighting against Luobai, completely ignoring the fact that the Navy was completely defeated. In this situation, if Rayleigh can save Luffy, it will be a good thing for Kizaru. At this moment, after observation Haki sensed something, Kizaru's face became ugly again. Luobai looked at him with a smile and teased. "Kizaru, it looks like you were stabbed in the back by one of your own people." As soon as the voice fell, Zon Taomaru and others who came to Subjugating Archipelago with Kizaru came to this area. Zon Taomaru complained to Kizaru, who was fighting Luobai. "Master Kizaru, do you have to use the Sparkling Fruit ability to travel? Don't wait for us." Kizaru didn't answer, just felt extremely aggrieved. Obviously, as long as Rayleigh and the others are allowed to fight with the Marines, Luffy can be rescued soon. It turned out that at this critical time, Zon Taomaru brought people here. The most important thing is that Zon Taomaru is not the only one who came to Subjugating Archipelago with him. "Pelusalino, Luobai is handed over to me to deal with. I will kill him with my own hands." With the sound of this mature woman's voice, a slash struck directly at the location of Luobai and Kizaru. Laugh. In the face of this slash, Luobai and Kizaru had a tacit understanding and at the same time retreated a little. The ground was torn apart by the sword energy, and the houses and trees along the way were also torn apart. Kizaru looked at the person with a wry smile and persuaded. "Gion, you are not Luobai's opponent, let me do it." Gion Hideyoshi frowned, glared at Kizaru and shouted. "Who said I wasn't his opponent? I said it. I'm going to kill him myself. You go and deal with those so-called supernovas, and absolutely can't let any pirate escape from the enemy islands of Subjugating." Kizaru is numb. If he were to deal with those supernovae, how would he let the water go? With Rayleigh's broken arm, who could stand in his way, the Marine Admiral. Can't pretend to fight Rayleigh so hard. Playing an ape is not such a law. Gion ignored Kizaru, picked up the saber in his hand and charged towards Obai. Seeing this, Kizaru sighed helplessly. Facing this situation, he had no choice. We can only take Luffy back first. As for how to deal with it, it is up to Marshal Sengoku to decide. Seeing Kizaru turn to assist the Marines against the supernovas, Obai threw his fists to resist Gion's crazy attack, and looked at Gion with great interest in front of him, who had a very body. Gion, it's only been a few days. Did you miss me so soon? Can't wait to come to me, knowing that I'm in Subjugating archipelago. Obai, you bloody. After hearing Obai's words, Gion's eyes instantly turned red, and her hands became more violent, slashing wildly at Obai who was in front of her. And Gion's roar caused everyone present to look at him, even Kizaru was no exception. Kizaru was also very puzzled by this, and after learning what happened to Subjugating archipelago, he volunteered to solve it. To Kizaru's surprise, Gion also took the initiative to take on this task. If he remembered correctly, Marshal Sengoku's face became very strange after hearing Gion's offer to ask Ying. Originally wanted to refuse Gion, but after seeing the firm look on her face, Marshal Sengoku agreed with a sigh. Let Gion and Kizaru come to Subjugating archipelago with the elite of the headquarters. Seeing Gion's attitude towards Obai now makes Kizaru feel that there is something special between them. What happened before, Sengoku didn't tell anyone. It is precisely because of this that other Marine executives do not know the relationship between Obai and Gion. Kizaru shook his head and sighed inwardly. It's really troublesome. If I knew that things would turn out like this, I wouldn't take the initiative to propose to meddle in this matter. Wouldn't it be better to let Sakazuki come? No, if Sakazuki came, I'm afraid things would get worse. Thinking of the scene where Sakazuki punched a supernova and killed all these guys, Kizaru quickly shook his head. Lifting the lightsaber Tiankong Yun sword in his hand, aiming at Rayleigh in front of him, he slashed down. Boom! With a sword down, Rayleigh's body retreated uncontrollably, leaving 2 deep scratches on his legs on the ground. Kizaru shook his head. Give up resistance, Rayleigh. In your current state, you have no strength to fight me. Rayleigh gasped heavily, staring at Kizaru, who was facing. Kizaru, since you know Luffy's identity, you should be very clear about the consequences of catching him, right? Hearing this, Kizaru frowned instantly, and the smile on his face disappeared. Rayleigh, are you threatening me? Rayleigh shook his head. You know, I'm telling the truth. Kizaru finally lost interest in talking nonsense with Rayleigh, and immediately said with a blank face. Although I don't want things to get out of hand because of Luffy's arrest. But that doesn't mean that first, as Marine Admiral, will accept your threat as a pirate. Rayleigh, as the deputy captain of the Roger Pirates, are you ready to appear on the execution stand at Naval Headquarters? The voice fell, Kizaru disappeared instantly, and a yellow light appeared. Kizaru, who appeared beside Rayleigh, raised the Tiankong cloud sword in his hand and slashed it. At the last moment, Rayleigh tried his best to dodge to one side, but the fighting instinct he had developed over the years saved his life. Laugh. As Kizaru's lightsaber fell, a deep crack instantly appeared where Rayleigh had been. Looking at the crack in front of him, Rayleigh's pupils shrank instantly, and he slashed at Kizaru with his sword. It's just a pity that Rayleigh is already a remnant of the old era, and its strength is no longer at its peak. Now Obai has cut off the arm that has held the sword for decades. In front of Kizaru, Marine Admiral, who is at his peak. This power is simply not enough. At this moment, Kizaru suddenly noticed Obai, who was fighting Gion, and started to swept away gradually without knowing it. This discovery made Kizaru frown deeply. This guy Obai, what exactly do you want to do? Although he couldn't guess Obai's thoughts, Kizaru still reminded Gion. Gion, be careful not to fall for Obai's trick. That guy is not so easy to deal with. Hearing this, Gion's chasing after Obai stagnates slightly, and then chases Obai without hesitation. No matter what kind of conspiracy Obai has, she can't just let him go. Looking at the 2 figures disappearing one after the other, Robin smiled and shook his head. This Marine Vice Admiral was really caught by Obai from beginning to end. Robin doesn't think Luobai is afraid of Gion. The reason why he led Gion out of here is because some things are not convenient to do here. Khalifa pushed up her glasses and said indifferently. It's not just Gion, the Marine Vice Admiral, isn't it the same for us? Robin nodded. It's the same, we all love Luobai's actions. From the beginning, Luobai started a war against them, and finally it evolved into the fact that they took the initiative to provoke the war. Is this called sweetness? This is obviously the taste of the marrow. After experiencing the beauty of the peak, who doesn't like this feeling? It is worth mentioning that, whether it is Kizaru, the Marine Admiral, or the Marines who came with him, at this time, they were very tacit and did not do anything to Robin, Khalifa and others. Even the residents of Subjugating archipelago who were onlookers were not surprised at all. After all, Luobai has enough strength to rival Marine Admiral. Who would dare to use his woman to completely anger Luobai before he had dealt with Luobai's huge threat? Kizaru knows all too well what the intricacies of Marine will be when he brings Luffy back to naval headquarters. If possible, Kizaru even hoped that Luobai would leave quickly with his women. Best not to show up when Marine is fighting the Whitebeard pirates. Just through the short fight just now, Kizaru could clearly perceive Luobai's unfathomable strength. Even he, the Marine Admiral, has no confidence at all to guarantee defeating Luobai. However, in order to hide people's eyes and ears, under the instruction of Kizaru, the ordinary sailors stationed in Subjugating archipelago cooperated with Robin and Khalifa to perform a play. At least to prove that Marine is not inactive. Meanwhile, another location in the Subjugating archipelago. Luobai looked at Gion who was chasing after him with perseverance, stopped and looked at her with a smile. Is it necessary to be so persistent with me? Gion's mature and intellectual face showed thick anger, glared at Luobai and roared. You fool, how on earth did you act like nothing happened? Luobai blinked in confusion, looked at her and asked. What do you mean? Did something happen? When Gion heard the words, his breathing suddenly stagnated, and he held the saber tightly in his hand. Just when she wanted to scold Luobai for being shameless, she saw Luobai walking towards her slowly. Shish, stop. Luobai was indifferent and walked straight towards Gion. Gion's eyes flashed a trace of panic and roared. I told you to stop. Luobai not only did not stop, but walked towards the tip of the knife in Gion's hand. If this can reduce the pain in your heart, then I don't mind being stabbed by you. Laugh. Luobai's clothes were pierced, and Gion was about to take a step back unconsciously. After noticing her actions, Gion couldn't help but get even more annoyed. Even she herself didn't know what was wrong. She clearly hated Luobai very much, but looking at his face, it seemed that she felt sorry for herself. Gion didn't want to kill him now. Why is this? Gion roared in his heart, trying his best to maintain the expression on his face, not wanting to show his wavering. However, after seeing Gion's reaction, Luobai's mouth twitched slightly without any hesitation. The magnetic fruit's ability was activated, and once again Gion's saber was freed, and it was directly inserted on the ground. Laugh. With the saber deeply inserted into the ground, Luobai strode in front of Gion and lowered his head. Well, seeing this face in front of her, Gion panicked and wanted to push it away, but Luobai had already embraced her waist. Would Luobai worry about Gion stabbing himself? How is this possible? For Luobai, who has multiple devil fruit abilities and even extremely powerful physical skills, even if Gion really gives him a knife. In a state of preparedness, Luobai is absolutely impossible to suffer any damage. The reason for doing this is just to gamble. It's all good, and it doesn't hurt if it doesn't. But now, Gion, the Marine Vice Admiral, only seems to belong to a mature royal sister, but, in terms of love, when it comes to encountering Luobai, a battle-hardened scum, then the ending will only be pinched to death. However, Gion still did not forget his identity after all, and only realized what stupid thing he had done after he came back to his senses. The most unacceptable thing for Gion is that she actually cooperated with Luobai just now. The embarrassed Gion tried her best to push Luobai away, and immediately pulled out the saber stuck on the ground, pointed at Luobai and roared angrily. Luobai, I'm going to kill you. Luobai just smiled and pointed at Gion's slightly swollen, red lips. You'd better organize your image first. Gion glanced down, and immediately became even more angry. Luo Bai, how could this fool be so experienced? You scum. You are a total thief. Asshole. Luo Bai looked at Gion with a smile and nodded. Thank you for your compliment, I will accept it. After he finished speaking, he ignored Gion and rushed towards the auction house. Looking at Luo Bai's back, Gion's eyes gradually became confused. In Gion's eyes, Luo Bai's image became more and more complicated. Call him a jerk, he did what he did to save Alabasta from crocodile. According to the intelligence obtained by Marine, Luo Bai has never done anything to bully ordinary people. All he bullies are pirates. Oh yes, Luo Bai also killed a lot of nobles when he was at West Blue. Of course, this also has a lot to do with those nobles taking the initiative to find him trouble. But to say Luo Bai is a good person, Luo Bai has never denied his identity as a pirate. He even did such a thing to himself. So, what does this guy Luo Bai really look like? Since that incident, Gion has read all the information about Luo Bai and finally came to Luo Bai's very complicated conclusion. In other words, Luo Bai didn't know what Gion was thinking, otherwise, it would still be that sentence. What you said to the grass is right, but who are you not? Luo Bai has never advertised himself as a good person, and even the so-called good things he did were just for the sake of profit. As long as I have no morals, no one can kidnap me. Do whatever you want and act recklessly, that is the state that Luo Bai pursues. After seeing Luo Bai returning to the wreckage of the auction house, Perona asked in surprise. Is Luo Bai so fast this time? Robin rolled his eyes when he heard the words, and said strangely. Don't you know this kind of thing? It's just because the timing and location are not right, it's not convenient to do some special things. Perona chuckled twice without answering. That is to say, her words were not heard by Luo Bai, otherwise, she would have to pay for it. Luo Bai ignored their conversation, but looked at a figure in the field. At this time, Kizaru is still entangled with Rayleigh, but Luo Bai can clearly tell that this guy has become an acting ape after all. Because, at this time, Bartholomew Kuma is slapping the members of the Straw Hats one by one, sending them away with the meatball fruit ability. Seeing the members of the Straw Hats being sent away one by one, both Kizaru and Rayleigh showed a relaxed look in their eyes. However, after seeing Luo Bai appear, Kizaru's pupils shrunk slightly, and his face became ugly again. I finally found an opportunity to be an acting ape, wouldn't it be ruined by Luo Bai again? At this moment, seeing that Bartholomew Kuma's palm was about to slap on Nami's body. Lightning flashed in Luo Bai's eyes, and he disappeared in place in an instant. The next moment, just as Bartholomew Kuma's palm was about to land on Nami, Luo Bai raised his right leg and kicked him out. Boom! A terrifying power came, causing the huge body of Bartholomew Kuma to fly upside down. After breaking several huge trees, Bartholomew Kuma finally stopped. Bartholomew Kuma, who was struggling to stand up, looked at Luo Bai with a deep frown, and asked in a deep voice. What do you want to do? Luo Bai raised his eyebrows and looked at him with a smile. This sentence, shouldn't I be asking you? With Kizaru and Rayleigh, sending these people away one by one. Hearing this, Kizaru's face changed instantly. After knocking Rayleigh back with a sword, he glared at Luo Bai and reprimanded him. Luo Bai, don't talk nonsense here, how could I possibly cooperate with these pirates? While forcing an explanation, Kizaru couldn't help but cursed inwardly. Bartholomew Kuma, this idiot, why don't you give Luffy away first? Do you have to send all his crew away before sending Luffy away? It's good now, Luo Bai is back, and if he wants to do it again, he has no chance. Basso Romy Bear finally noticed the difference, and immediately did not dare to hesitate any longer. With a slammed foot, the huge body rushed towards Luffy, who was lying unconscious on the ground. It's just a pity that Luo Bai is not targeting anyone compared to the speed, but everyone is trash. Originally just a thunder fruit, Luo Bai's speed was at the top, and now he got the sparkling fruit ability from Kizaru. It makes Luo Bai unparalleled in terms of speed. Seeing Luo Bai standing in front of him, Bartholomew Kuma fired a pressure cannon at him with his meatball fruit. Try to use this method to stop Luo Bai's actions. Seeing this, Luo Bai's mouth twitched slightly. Under the circumstance that he could easily avoid the past, he still blocked his blow with a fist. I have to say, before the cheat, who can get the opponent's ability through battle, is not exposed. It's so easy to get there. The meatball fruit ability has been obtained, so the Bartholomew Kuma is useless. Seeing that his palm was about to touch Luffy on the ground, a saber stabbed directly into his palm. Laugh. Unpredictable, the sound of the saber piercing the flesh and blood came, and a penetrating wound appeared in the palm of Bartholomew Kuma. Hot blood began to emerge, directly interrupting his actions. Before Bartholomew Kuma could make any extra moves, Obai appeared on the top of his head again, aimed at the head of the guy who appeared to be 7 warlords of the sea, but was actually a revolutionary army cadre, and kicked him hard. Boom. Step down. Under that terrifying power, Bartholomew Kuma rolled rapidly in the air, and then fell heavily to the ground. The huge body smashed the ground into a very deep huge pothole. Looking at the helpless look in Kizaru's eyes, Obai said with a smile. Help you Marine again, how are you going to thank me? I'm going to put you on the execution stand at Naval Headquarters, will this Shefa be satisfied? Kizaru stared blankly at Obai across from him, his eyes full of helplessness. Obai waved his hands nonchalantly. If you have the strength, of course I have no opinion. After all, I don't have such a solid background, so first can let Marine Admiral go with the pirates. Kizaru is numb, facing Obai, he really has nothing to do. Kizaru can think of what happened today at the Subjugating archipelago, and it will soon spread throughout the world. If Marine didn't deal with Luffy, it wasn't just him who would be reviled as an ape. Even Garp Vice Admiral, a Marine hero, will definitely be implicated by Luffy. Thinking of this, Kizaru couldn't help but glance at Luffy, who was lying unconscious on the ground. If possible, Kizaru really wants to smash this guy's head off. Just because he appeared in the Subjugating archipelago, the entire Marine will be affected. At this moment, Bartholomew Kuma, who was kicked and flew out by Obai, struggled to stand up and wanted to continue to slap Luffy away. Seeing this situation, Obai looked at Kizaru with great interest and joked. Now, are you going to continue to protect this straw hat Luffy? Kizaru ignored Obai and turned to look at Bartholomew Kuma who was approaching Luffy's location. A dazzling light flashed above the fingers, and the next moment, a beam of light shot directly at the 7 warlords of the sea. Call out. Laugh. A blow hit Bartholomew Kuma's shoulder, directly blocking his forward move. Bartholomew Kuma looked down at the wound that was penetrated by the light, and then looked at the location of Kizaru in confusion. Kizaru sighed inwardly, and then said in a deep voice. Bartholomew Kuma. As the 7 warlords of the sea, he helped the pirates escape. As to what to do with you, it will be up to Marshal Sengoku. If you do this again, then you can die. Kizaru could clearly see that after hearing his words, Bartholomew Kuma's face was full of astonishment. As if he wanted to question himself, wisely shut his mouth after realizing the situation he was in. And this made Kizaru secretly relieved. If Bartholomew Kuma really asks that question, then his end to Kizaru will not be as simple as being spurned. After Bartholomew Kuma lost his last chance to send Luffy away, Kizaru had already made a decision. Whatever happened next, he had to bring Luffy back to Naval Headquarters. As for what effect this will have, let Marshal Sengoku have a headache. He's just an admiral, not a marshal, so why bother thinking about these things? All Kizaru needs to do is take orders from Marshal Marine. At this moment, Gion finally arrived here belatedly. Looking at her slightly swollen red lips, Kizaru was really dumbfounded. What exactly happened in this world? Is there such a relationship between Obai and Gion? After hesitating for a moment, Kizaru finally couldn't help but ask. Gion, how are you now? Gion was stunned when she heard the words. The reason why she returned here so much later than Obai was because it took some time to sort out. However, it has already been sorted out, so is there any clue that Kizaru has discovered? Gion pretended to be calm. I'm fine, you deal with other people, I'll kill Obai. Kizaru, but don't say goodbye, I'm afraid that you will kill yourself and give yourself to Obai. Kizaru coughed with a weird face, and said, I will deal with Obai, you are responsible for guarding the others, and you cannot let any pirate escape. Gion originally wanted to refuse, but after seeing the wink from Kizaru, she agreed after hesitating. Gion glared at Obai viciously, originally wanting to say something cruel, but Luobai looked at her with a smile. Be careful of Gion, don't let these so-called supernovas be taken away by someone who is not careful. In that case, when you return to naval headquarters, you will be reprimanded. Luobai, is he caring about me? Gion swallowed back the cruel words he wanted to say, and went forward with a knife expressionlessly to cooperate with the Marines to round up the supernovas. At the same time, Kizaru held the Tiankong Cloud sword in his hand, stomped his foot hard, and charged directly towards Luobai's position. Facing Kizaru's attack, Luobai did not choose to retreat, but took the initiative to meet the opponent. Boom! The fist collided with the Tiankong Yunjian, and a violent roar erupted. The aftermath of the battle between the two shook the surrounding ground to the point of cracking, and the dust in the sky covered their figures. Kizaru waved the Tiankong Cloud sword in his hand and slashed at Luobai, looking at him in a strange tone. Luobai, you are more and more surprising to me. Gion Shi. Kizaru didn't finish his sentence, he didn't know how to deal with this matter at all. At this time, he suddenly remembered why Marshal Sengoku's face was so strange when Gion volunteered to come to the Subjugating archipelago before. Could it be that there was some strange relationship between Luobai and Gion? Mom, is this too exciting? As a flower of naval headquarters, Gion has never scorned any man. Could it be that the pirate Luobai will be cheaper in the end? Luobai ignored Kizaru's strong desire for 8 trigrams, and just waved his fist to fight against him. Taking advantage of Kizaru's most thirst for knowledge and revealing a flaw, Luobai accurately seized the opportunity and punched the opponent's head with a punch. Boom! The surrounding Marines and the residents of Subjugating archipelago only heard a loud noise, and Kizaru, who was wearing the coat of justice, tumbled out of the dust. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, with the elementalization of Sparkling Fruit's ability, Kizaru stood firmly on the ground. Kizaru shook his dazed head, looked at Luobai who was walking out of the dust mist, and said with a displeased expression. Why do you like hitting people in the head so much? Luobai said with a sincere expression. Actually, I don't like it. It's mainly because you see the expression on your face that I can't help it. Hearing this, Kizaru's face froze for a moment, and then he looked at Luobai angrily. The yellow light flashed and appeared directly above Luobai. Kizaru knows exactly what this guy Luobai means. I'm riding a horse because I look old, not wretched. Facing Kizaru's sudden attack, Luobai's eyes flashed with a flash of lightning, and he disappeared in place in an instant. Shish! Kizaru's heart was horrified when his sword failed. How could Luobai's speed be so fast? Before Kizaru could come up with the answer to this question, Luobai silently appeared beside him, targeting Kizaru's head again, and smashed it down with a punch. Realizing that something was wrong, Kizaru put the Tiankong Yunjian by his side, trying to block Luobai's attack. However, the moment Luobai's fist came into contact with Kizaru's lightsaber, the terrifying force directly knocked Kizaru backwards. The legs slid abruptly on the ground, dragging out 2 extremely deep scratches. Kizaru stuck his lightsaber on the ground and stopped himself in this way. He looked up at Luobai, who was facing him. The relaxed and wretched smile on Kizaru's face disappeared completely, replaced by a thick and dignified look. Luobai, it seems that all of us have underestimated you. In terms of speed, it's not inferior to me, a sparkling fruit-capable person, and even has a faint meaning of surpassing. Even if it is power, it is stronger than most people. I am now, really confirming that you have a bigger plan. Kizaru's heart is very heavy. He has already noticed that Marine has completely fallen into Luobai's plan. First, the Fire Fist Ace was handed over to Marine, and it was also explained that Ace was the son of the pirate King Roger. Now they are using various methods to get the Marine to capture Luffy as well. If that doesn't make any difference, then Kizaru is not qualified to be this Marine Admiral. Luobai smiled and looked at Kizaru. Then what do you think I'm plotting? Kizaru didn't answer. If he knew, he wouldn't be talking so much nonsense with Luobai. In fact, Kizaru also knew that at such a time, no matter what the purpose of Luobai was, there was absolutely no way they would stop here. The next thing Marine can do is to bring all the high-end forces together to deal with all the special situations that will happen in that war later. With this in mind, Kizaru has already made a decision in his heart. Taking a deep breath, looked at Luobai and said solemnly, Obai, if I say I don't want to continue fighting with you, you shouldn't have any objections, right? Obai looked at Kizaru with interest, but finally nodded. Seeing that Obai agreed, Kizaru felt even more that Obai's picture was very big. Because, Obai doesn't want their marine to suffer any loss now. After all, in Kizaru's view, if this battle continues, there is a high probability that it will be a lose-lose situation. At least until the end of the war with the Whitebeard pirates, Kizaru doesn't want to break up with Obai. Kizaru took a deep look at Obai and warned in a deep voice. Whatever you want to do, you better not do anything Marine doesn't want to see. Otherwise, even if the public execution of Fire Fist Ace is delayed, I will definitely kill you as soon as possible. Without waiting for Obai to respond, he went straight to help Gion deal with the so-called supernovas. Kizaru finally chose to compromise. He knew very well that Obai didn't want to completely tear his face off with Marine, so he naturally ignored him. As for the 2 celestial dragons that died, and the one enslaved by Obai, Kizaru wouldn't care that much. The most important thing now is to return to naval headquarters as soon as possible and discuss with Marshal Sengoku how to deal with the next situation. Looking at Gion, who was slashing at the supernova with his saber constantly, Obai's eyes flashed, and his figure disappeared instantly. The next moment, he suddenly appeared in front of Capone Beige, who was facing the Gion offensive. Capone Beige was startled when he saw this, and immediately launched an artillery attack on Obai with the castle in his body. Facing the incoming shells, Obai easily kicked it into the air, letting the shells explode in the air. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time as the shell exploded in the air, Obai exerted a little force on his feet, jumped up and aimed at this guy's head and slammed it. With deliberate effort, Capone Beige was kicked into a coma by him. Seeing this, Gion looked at Obai with complicated eyes and scolded coldly. What else are you doing? Since Kizaru said he's letting you go for the time being, why don't you leave? Obai smiled when he heard the words, and said softly while passing Gion. Are you happy to see me helping you? Before Gion could react, Obai attacked the next supernova. Watching Obai solve the supernova faster than Kizaru, Gion's mood became more complicated. Although I always felt that something was wrong, I finally acquiesced that Obai was helping myself. Obai just wants to say that even if he doesn't quite appreciate the abilities of these supernovas. But it's all coming, so it can't be wasted like this, can it? As for telling her in front of Gion, the reason why she did it was to help her. Is rhetoric and not the same one of the compulsory lessons for Poseidon? Robin looked at Gion, who was standing on the spot with complicated eyes, couldn't help smiling, and sighed inwardly. Continue like this, even if the Marine Vice Admiral's will is firm, I am afraid that sooner or later, he will sink into it. Robin is the one who really knows why Obai did it. First, the rubber fruit ability of the Straw Hat Luffy, and then the sparkling fruit ability of Marine Admiral Kizaru. Now it seems that these so-called supernovas have completely become Obai's tools to improve his strength. At this moment, Luffy, who was lying unconscious on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes, and a painful moan came out of his mouth. His voice attracted Rayleigh, who was also easily defeated by Kizaru, who was lying beside him in embarrassment. Seeing Luffy awake, Rayleigh spoke immediately. Luffy, wake up. Luffy struggled and turned his head to look at Rayleigh with a broken arm, his eyes sad. Uncle Rayleigh, where are my friends? Rayleigh took a deep breath and told Luffy what had happened in his fastest voice. Luffy breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that Bartholomew Kuma had sent all his companions away, leaving only one Nami. As long as your friends don't die in the hands of that Obai, that's the best thing. Rayleigh looked at his reaction and said in a deep voice. Luffy, let Bartholomew Kuma see you awake. He'll find a way to send you away. Hearing this, Luffy asked after hesitation. But what about Nami? Rayleigh reprimanded with a sullen face. Now is not the time to say that. Luffy shook his head and said, no, I can't give up my partner. Looking at the stubborn Luffy, Rayleigh only felt more headaches, and reassured him after thinking for a moment. The most important thing now is that you survive. As long as you are alive, Obai and Marine will not do anything to your partner. Luffy was silent for a moment, then asked, is it true, Uncle Rayleigh? Rayleigh nodded vigorously and said without hesitation. Of course it is. You are their target. As long as you are alive, they will never harm your partner. Go ahead and run to where Bartholomew Kuma is. After getting Rayleigh's definite answer, Luffy didn't hesitate any longer, stood up abruptly, and ran frantically towards Bartholomew Kuma's location. Rayleigh looked nervously at Luffy's figure, without the slightest guilt for his lies. After all, in his eyes, only Luffy who inherited Roger's will is the most important. Just like Luobai said, you are already a pirate, do you still need to worry so much? After seeing Luffy get up, Nami was a little surprised. Just as he was about to say something, he found the direction Luffy was running. As if realizing something, Nami lowered his raised arms with dim eyes. It seems that I am the one who was abandoned. Bartholomew Kuma had been keeping an eye on Luffy, and now seeing him running towards his position, he clearly sensed what he was thinking. Bartholomew Kuma didn't hesitate when he was about to meet Luffy, but just after the two were very close. Luobai appeared again and kicked Bartholomew Kuma out. Facing Luffy who couldn't stop and rushed straight towards him, Luobai pinched the Pirate King's neck. He turned his head and looked at Nami with a smile. Nami, you don't want to see your captain die here, do you? Chapter 51. Really? After hearing this sentence, Robin's face showed such an expression as expected. Even the faces of Khalifa and Perona, who were beside her, became very strange. After all, the two of them heard the same sentence earlier than Nami. It seems that we have another sister on our ship. Robin smiled and looked at Robin with long orange hair and nodded with satisfaction. Khalifa on the side pushed up his glasses and said indifferently, "Isn't that a good thing? After all, the three of us alone can't handle Luobai's terrifying fighting power." Perona nodded in agreement, but she glanced at the Shalulia Palace behind her, and Kami, who was shivering, her face suddenly became very strange. While Robin, Khalifa, and Perona communicated, Nami looked at Luffy, who was pinched by Luobai's neck, and seemed to have difficulty breathing, and asked timidly, "What's the meaning?" Luobai looked Nami up and down, and said without thinking, "Come on my ship and be my navigator, and in exchange I put this straw hat Luffy." Hearing this, without waiting for Nami to respond, Luffy shouted with all his strength, "Nami, don't promise him. You are my partner. Without your help as a navigator, I would not have become the Pirate King." Nami looked at Luffy sadly and muttered, "But, wasn't I abandoned just now? I just saw that all the partners were slapped away by Bartholomew Kuma, which made Nami very panic." After all, she didn't have an explanation from Rayleigh, so she didn't know the lives of Zoro and Sanji. After finding out that Luffy woke up from a coma, Nami was still very surprised and felt that he had found support. As long as the captain was there, she wouldn't be so worried. In the end, before she could say a word to Luffy, she saw Luffy rush towards Bartholomew Kuma's position with all his strength. Combined with what Luobai said just now that Bartholomew Kuma could send people away, Nami instantly understood Luffy's thoughts. It is because of this that Nami thinks he is the one who was abandoned. However, after hearing Nami's words, Luffy's face changed instantly, and even opened his mouth to explain. "Not like that, Nami. Uncle Rayleigh told me just now that Marine and the others won't hurt you as long as I'm alive. Because of this, I wanted to leave with the power of Bartholomew Kuma." Luobai let Luffy explain to Nami, because only after he finished explaining, Luobai could give him a fatal blow. Luobai said with a smile as he looked at Luffy who was pinching his neck, "Do you think what Rayleigh said is true? Marine is really going to let your partner go by not getting you? Should I say you were too naive, or too stupid, or did you make this choice even though you knew the truth?" Luffy shook his head pale and muttered, "It's not like that, it's not like that. I won't give up my partner." At this moment, Luobai continued to speak in a timely manner. "Really?" Luffy nodded vigorously in a very firm tone. "Of course it is. I, Monkey D. Luffy, never give up on a partner. For me, partners are the most important." Hearing this, Luobai pretended to be suddenly enlightened, raised his chin, and motioned for Luffy to look at the mermaid Kami standing beside Robin. Leaning a little closer, he said with a smile, "So, in your eyes, that mermaid is not a friend or a partner at all. After all, you left without any hesitation in the auction hall before, completely ignoring Kami in the fish tank." The words fell, Luffy's breathing suddenly stopped, and his face became a little distorted. He defended with dull eyes. It's not like this. At the auction just now, Uncle Rayleigh said he would bring out the body of Little 8 and Kami. Obai threw it on the ground and shook his hand as if he was disgusted. Really? But where is the Little 8's body in your mouth? Also, if Robin hadn't brought Kami out just now, what do you think her fate would have been like? Brought out by Rayleigh, or was it buried in the wreckage of the auction house just like the corpse of the Little 8? Luffy, who was about to collapse, looked pale and looked at Obai with dull eyes. Shut up, shut up. I never thought of that. Never. In Luffy's eyes, the smiling Obai in front of him is no different from the devil. A smile flashed in Obai's eyes, adding the last sentence to Luffy's collapse. Faced with the same situation, you made the same choice, so you really don't know what will happen to the two of them after you leave. Die at Marine's hands, or in a cage forever. As Obai's voice fell, Luffy rushed towards Obai in front of him. Seeing Luffy's action, Obai didn't hesitate at all, just kicked him on the head. Boom, step down, and Luffy, who had just woken up not long ago, fell into a coma again. And this time, he suffered a double blow, both physically and mentally. Looking at Luffy, who bounced on the ground twice and then silently, Nami finally came back to his senses. The conversation between Obai and Luffy just now brought a great shock to Nami's heart. No matter whether Luffy had thought about what kind of situation he would face after he left. In Nami's heart, Luffy's importance doesn't seem to be as high as it used to be. However, no matter what, Luffy helped him defeat the dragon and save the village of Kokoja. In that case, let's do one last thing for Luffy. Nami took a deep breath, looked at Obai's back and said, I promise you, I'd like to be your navigator, but I hope you don't kill Luffy. Hearing this, Obai's mouth twitched, turned around and looked at Nami with a smile. No problem. In my heart, the importance of Miss Navigator is much more important than this straw hat Luffy. Nami didn't answer, just glanced at the unconscious Luffy on the ground for the last time, then turned and walked directly to Robin's side. She has experienced too many things today, and her heart has suffered too many blows. In order not to let himself collapse, the indifference on his face is the last disguise Nami can make. Obai doesn't care about Nami's attitude, she's already on his boat, can she still run away? Not only can Nami not be able to run, it won't even take long, Obai will get her heart together. It's not just Nami who changed Luffy's image. The mermaid Kami, who had been shivering all the time, also had other thoughts about Luffy at this time. You must know that from the very beginning when she saw Luffy and the others in the auction house, Kami had been looking forward to being rescued by them. But until the end, all she saw was that the Straw Hats threw herself away and ran out of the auction. He kept saying that he was their friend, not the goods that Obai could buy with Bailey. In the end, is this how friends end up? Of course Obai is well aware of their changes. Looking at Obai, who was smiling, Rayleigh, who was lying on the ground, stared at him with an extremely gloomy expression. Obai, you are so cruel. I didn't kill Luffy, but chose to kill my heart in this way. I'm afraid Luffy hits harder than anyone else. Obai glanced at him and said lightly, don't be so aggrieved. As a pirate, shouldn't it be unscrupulous? Isn't it all because of you that he can be punished by me? Hearing this, Rayleigh's face became even more ugly. If it wasn't for the heavy damage, Rayleigh would have to fight Obai desperately now. But Rayleigh is also very clear that what Obai said is completely true. Whether it's Kami in the auction house or Nami just now, if it wasn't for him, Luffy would never have made such a choice of abandoning his partner. However, the reason why he did this was for the sake of Luffy. Only by successfully escaping from the Subjugating archipelago can you do anything else. Now that things have developed, there is absolutely no room for maneuver, and all Rayleigh can do is to wait for the day of the public execution. Appear on the execution stand at Naval Headquarters with Ace and Luffy. Thinking of this, Rayleigh looked at Obai with a gloomy expression and cursed. Obai, you will definitely pay for what you do. Obai stepped forward, stepped on the Pluton and said with a smile. Really? Then I hope you can live to see that scene. Hiss. Rayleigh fought back the pain, hissing cold air. At this moment, Gion strode over and warned Obai. Get out of Luobai, don't accidentally kill him. As the deputy captain of the Roger Pirates, Pluton Rayleigh is no less useful than Fire Fist Ace. Luobai smiled indifferently when he heard the words, of course he knew this. With the efforts of Gion and Kizaru, all the supernovas present have been captured, and Zontaomaru and others have restrained them. Gion warned Luobai with a blank face. Luobai, no matter what your purpose is, as long as you do something harmful to Marine, I will never let you go. Luobai didn't care about Gion's threat, but said with a chuckle. Gion, in fact, when you smile, you are far more beautiful than a cold face. Seeing the fiery look in Luobai's eyes, Gion felt panic in her heart, that is, there were still sailors around, otherwise she couldn't help but retreat. Gion took a deep breath and calmed down his complicated mood. Remember what I told you. After he finished speaking, he ignored Luobai, turned around and left with the sailors. Before leaving, Kizaru also gave Luobai a very meaningful look, as if he was also warning Luobai not to act rashly. They have no more time to waste on Luobai. Anyway, with their marine's power in Subjugating archipelago, there is no way to kill or capture Luobai. So what's the hesitation? The most important thing now is to return to naval headquarters as soon as possible and discuss with Marshal Sengoku what to do with the Straw Hat Luffy. After the Marines all left, Robin came over and looked at Luobai and asked, "What are we going to do next?" Luobai waved his hand when he heard the words. Of course, enjoying 2 days at Subjugating archipelago, waiting for that war to begin. Next, you can have a good time here. Hearing this, Robin, Khalifa, and Perona's eyes lit up. You must know that Subjugating archipelago can be said to be the most lively place, whether it is selling things or all kinds of food, everything is available. For women, no one can resist the temptation to go shopping. And Robin, Khalifa, and Perona also know very well. Nami and Kami, Luobai, who have just joined their Crystal Palace, will never let go of anything. While Luobai took Robin and others to shop at Subjugating archipelago, Kizaru and Gion also returned to naval headquarters with the sailors. In the marshal's office, Sengoku looked at Luffy and Rayleigh in front of him, only to feel that his head started to hurt. How did it get to this point? I'm afraid no one knows better than Sengoku what Luffy's arrest means. That is to say, Garp is still in Impel down, otherwise, when he sees Luffy with broken arms and covered with blood, he doesn't know how he will feel. Kizaru sighed helplessly. If it wasn't for Luobai, things wouldn't have developed to this point. At the time of Subjugating archipelago, there were a lot of reporters watching. Sengoku understood Kizaru's words in seconds. With Luffy's identity exposed and Luobai helping Marine deal with these pirates. If Luffy can still escape successfully, then the Marine will be on the cusp of the moment, and they will be directly suspected and spurned by the whole world. This situation is much more serious than catching Luffy. Sengoku snorted at the unconscious Luffy. If he could, he really wanted to punch this guy in the head. An ace has already made Sengoku guarded against Garp, and now with a grandson Luffy, who can guarantee what kind of thing Garp's guy will do. As an old comrade who has fought side by side for many years, Sengoku doesn't want to fight Garp anyway. It's a pity that this kind of thing is not his decision. Sengoku sighed inwardly, turned his head to look at Rayleigh, and his face became even more unpleasant. Rayleigh, I never thought you would have been in the Subjugating archipelago for so many years. Rayleigh smiled palely. I picked Subjugating archipelago to make this happen. It can be said that it is normal for things like darkness under the lights. Sengoku snorted coldly. What's the use of that? Isn't money in the hands of our Marines now? Tell you Rayleigh, no matter what happens to this Luffy, at least your destiny is set. That is to be publicly executed on the execution stand at naval headquarters with your Captain Roger's son. Furthermore, after this news is announced, the remnants of the Roger pirates will come to save you, right? Rayleigh's face became extremely ugly when he heard this. Although I had already made psychological preparations, after I really heard it, it was inevitable that I could not accept it. Without waiting for Rayleigh to say anything, Sengoku waved directly. First take them out and put them in custody, I need to think about what to do next. Kizaru agreed immediately after hearing the words, and walked out with Rayleigh and Luffy in one hand. As I said long ago, this kind of thing should be left to Marshal Sengoku to have a headache. As for his Marine Admiral, he can just fish and paddle. After Kizaru left, Sengoku pondered for a while, and finally chose to call Kong, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. After all, the Whitebeard pirates, the Roger pirates, the Red Hair pirates, and the Revolutionary Army. When these four forces add up, even the Marines can't stand it. Not to mention the Garp guy risks betraying Marine. After Sengoku reported the details to Kong, Kong was silent for a long time, and Sengoku did not urge. If you make the wrong decision in this kind of thing, the consequences can be very serious. As the former Marshal Marine and the current commander-in-chief of the three armies, Kong finally said in a deep voice. Sengoku, just do as you say. When necessary, I will bring someone to support Marine Mao. Yes, Commander Kong. After the phone bug hung up, Sengoku walked slowly to the window. Looking at the busy sailors below, he couldn't help muttering. Public execution of Fire Fist Ace along with Straw Hat Luffy. This war is no longer in the hands of Marine. I hope there will be no accidents in this war. After getting the approval of the Generalissimo Kong, Sengoku did not hesitate when even announced the decision to publicly execute Pluton Rayleigh along with Straw Hat Luffy. And this decision directly shook the whole world. Of course, what Obai did in the Subjugating archipelago also caught everyone's attention. A small wooden boat on the Grand Line. Thief ha 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 ha. Pluton Rayleigh, Straw Hat Luffy. Are these two guys going to be publicly executed at naval headquarters with Ace? And the guy Obai actually killed 2 celestial dragons in Subjugating archipelago, and even enslaved 1 celestial dragons. This is really, the commotion is bigger than I expected. Blackbeard Teach looked at the newspaper in his hand with excitement in his eyes. He really did not expect that Obai would do such a thing. Fan Oka on the side shrugged and exclaimed with the same expression. Although I have long known that Obai cannot bow to Marine and the world government because of his status as the 7 warlords of the sea. But such a crazy move is still unexpected. Poison Q nodded frantically when he heard this. Not to mention other people, even an arrogant guy like their captain would never dare to do such a thing. Killing and enslaving celestial dragons will lead to the coming of the world government. However, what about the world government? Didn't let anyone kill Obai. Teach grinned, eyes full of madness. How could it be like that? The reason why the world government didn't let Marine kill Obai at all costs is because the war with the Whitebeard pirates is about to start. Furthermore, the arrest of Pluton Rayleigh and Straw Hat Luffy will definitely lead to the participation of other forces. Even if Marine is strong, he will never be able to take advantage of this war. Both Fan Oka and Poison Q nodded in agreement, but Fan Oka couldn't help but ask in the end. Captain, will Obai's actions affect our plans? Hearing this, Teach was stunned on the spot, and his face became extremely gloomy after thinking of the major forces that would be involved in this war. Obviously, I also thought that in this situation, it is not so easy to get Whitebeard's shock fruit ability. Teach said very annoyed. That Obai, if it weren't for him, Lao Su's plans would not have been disrupted, and even his identity as 7 warlords of the sea should be mine. Seeing his captain swearing there, Fan Oka and Poison Q looked at each other and could clearly see the helpless look in the other's eyes. Since the Fire Fist Ace was snatched from Teach by Obai, Teach has always been like. Especially now seeing that Obai doesn't cherish the title of 7 warlords of the sea and was removed for killing and enslaving celestial dragons. Blackbeard Teach is even more annoyed. After all, according to his plan, he originally wanted to use the identity of 7 warlords of the sea to go to Impel down to recruit those powerful prisoners. It's good now, I'm afraid there is no such opportunity. Teach took a deep breath, turned his head and looked at Van Oka and Q in a deep voice. Never mind that guy. Anyway, no matter what happens, I'm going to get that old Whitebeard shock fruit ability. Moby Dick. Marco held the newly released newspaper with a very complicated expression on his face. Dad, that guy Obai has made a big move again. Rayleigh and Ace's younger brother, Luffy, are now in Marine's hands, and Marine intends to publicly execute them along with Ace. After hearing this, even Whitebeard couldn't help but look sideways. Rayleigh and Luffy. The surprised look on Whitebeard's face gradually dissipated after seeing Marco nodding his head. After a brief silence, Whitebeard couldn't help but burst into laughter. Goo. That guy Sengoku, Is he too confident in the Marine, or is he despising us guys too much? Doesn't he know what the consequences of doing so will be? Those remnants of the Roger pirates, the red hair pirates of that brat from Shanks. How could they just sit and watch Rayleigh get executed by Marine and ignore it? Whitebeard really didn't expect that Sengoku guy would make such a stupid move. Is this a deliberate increase in the difficulty for fear of their Marine winning too easily? Marco on the side was not as relaxed as Whitebeard, but shook his head and said, "Father, this was not what Marine intended." Whitebeard turned to look at Marco suspiciously. Feeling his father's gaze, Marco didn't hesitate, and immediately explained. "From what I've been told, Kizaru originally wanted both Luffy and Rayleigh to leave, not to bring them back to naval headquarters. After all, Marine is well aware of the impact of capturing Luffy and Rayleigh at this time. But under the manipulation of Obai, if Marine doesn't want to be ruined, he can only take them back to deal with it. Dad, according to my guess, the reason Obai did this must be some kind of huge conspiracy." Whitebeard's brows furrowed, then relaxed. He laughed a few times in comfort. "Don't worry, Marco. No matter what the plot of that kid named Obai is, I can rescue Ace. If he wants to die, I don't mind killing him." These words show the spirit possessed by the strongest man in the world. In his opinion, no matter what Obai wants to do, in the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks are useless. If it was just the Whitebeard pirates, then maybe Whitebeard would still be full of worries. But now with the remnants of the Roger pirates, and Shanks' red hair pirates, what else to worry about? Just do it. And most importantly, now that his grandson Ace and his own grandson Luffy are going to be publicly executed together, even if Garp is a Marine hero, I am afraid he can't hold back no matter what. As a strong contemporary, Whitebeard knows very well what kind of strength that Garp guy has. Whitebeard never thought of asking anyone for help. But now that other people are involved, can Whitebeard force the other party not to participate? Isn't this sick? For the current Whitebeard, the most important thing is to successfully rescue Ace and try to make his son's sacrifice as little as possible in this war. After all, Whitebeard wants to make Ace the new One Piece. Whitebeard looked at Marco and asked, "Marco, what did everyone else say? Are you committed to the war?" The other people in Whitebeard's mouth are naturally the sons who originally belonged to the members of the Whitebeard pirates, and then independently established their own pirates. Marco nodded and smiled. "Of course I did. Even before Joe's and I contacted them, they took the initiative to participate in the war. For those guys, of course not letting you go to naval headquarters to rescue Ace, Daddy." Hearing this, Whitebeard couldn't help but burst into laughter. Even after leaving the Whitebeard pirates, those little devils are still his Whitebeard's sons. Looking at the entire Whitebeard pirates, there is only one, Teach, who murdered his comrades and betrayed the Whitebeard pirates. Looking at Whitebeard laughing, Marco finally couldn't help sighing inwardly. He still felt that Obai's purpose might not be that simple at all. I hope nothing happens in the war with Marine after that. The base camp of the Revolutionary Army. The island of White Clay on the Grand Line. Just as the senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army were discussing matters, someone suddenly pushed open the door of the conference room and rushed over with the newspaper. "Boss, something big has happened in the Subjugating archipelago. The war between Marine and the Whitebeard pirates soon changed." The words of this member of the Revolutionary Army echoed in the conference room, causing all the senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army present to turn their attention to him. Dorag, who was sitting in the first place, raised his brows and asked with a smile on his face. "What happened? It can't be that Marine doesn't plan to publicly execute Fire Fist Ace, right?" The rest of the top leaders of the Revolutionary Army couldn't help laughing when they heard this. If Marine withdraws his decision to publicly execute Fire Fist Ace at this time, Marine will instantly become the target of public criticism. Most ordinary people will have doubts about Marine. However, their Revolutionary Army is very happy to see such a scene. It's a pity that they all know that even if Marine is dazed, it is absolutely impossible to make such a decision. Drago waved his hand to stop the laughter of everyone present, turned his head to look at the member of the Revolutionary Army holding a newspaper, and wanted to know what the big event he was talking about was. Feeling the gazes of these high-level officials, the Revolutionary Army member swallowed and said, Lu Obai killed 2 celestial dragons and enslaved 1 celestial dragon in Subjugating archipelago. Then helped Marine and successfully capture the supernovas in the Subjugating archipelago. And Marine also officially announced that Pluton Rayleigh and Straw Hat Luffy will be executed on the day Firefist Ace is publicly executed. The voice fell, and a discussion sounded in the conference room. Pluton Rayleigh, deputy captain of the Roger Pirates. Marine is doing this probably because he wants to use Rayleigh's identity to draw out all the remnants of the Roger Pirates. It seems that Marine is determined to end the so-called era of pirates. Isn't this a good thing? These pirates are unstable elements that should be eliminated and cleaned up. Quote. Hearing the discussion in his ears, Drago also stood up abruptly. He slapped one on the table in front of him, stared at the member of the Revolutionary Army, and questioned in a low tone. Who did you just say? Who is Pluton Rayleigh going to be publicly executed? The Revolutionary Army member was startled by Drago's gaze, but after seeing his eagerness, he repeated it. Pluton Rayleigh and Straw Hat Luffy. Boom. After getting a definite answer, Dorag grabbed the newspaper in his hand. Looking at the contents of the newspaper, his face began to change back and forth. The surrounding high-level Revolutionary Army can clearly perceive that anger and killing intent are gathering in Drago's eyes. The Revolutionary Army member asked with some puzzlement. Leader, is there any special relationship between Straw Hat Luffy and our Revolutionary Army? Dorag ignored his question, just stared at the picture of Luffy's broken bones on the newspaper. And Bello Beatty, the commander of the Revolutionary Army's Eastern Army, said with a strange look. The leader's name is Monkey D. Drago. Straw Hat Luffy's name is Monkey D. Luffy. So, Chief, is Straw Hat Luffy your son? The voice fell, and the meeting room suddenly fell into an extremely strange silence. They didn't even need Dorag to answer, they had already confirmed that Bellabetti was right. Otherwise, how could the Dorag leader behave like this after hearing that Straw Hat Luffy was about to be executed? Koala touched Sabo's arm beside him and sighed in a low voice. I didn't expect Sabo. The leader has a son, and his son is one of the supernovas, Straw Hat Luffy. I just don't know, will the leader decide to rescue Straw Hat Luffy? After he finished speaking, there was no response, and Koala turned to Sabo suspiciously. At this time, I suddenly realized that Sabo was pressing his head with both hands, and he was still murmuring something in his mouth. Moreover, Sabo's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and the expression on his face became extremely contorted. Fire Fist Ace. Straw Hat Luffy. Why? Why is it so familiar? What exactly do I have to do with them? In my lost memory, what important thing is missing? Sabo is like a madman, and the voice of the action is getting louder and louder, and Koala shouted worriedly. Sabo, what's wrong with you? Koala's voice attracted everyone's attention in the conference room, even Dorag was no exception. They noticed Sabo's strangeness at the first time, and hurriedly asked. Sabo, what happened? How did you react? Seeing that Sabo completely ignored their questioning, these senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army gathered around one after another. At this moment, Sabo suddenly widened his eyes and stood up abruptly. I remember. Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, they shouldn't be the obstacle to be cleared away. They are my brothers. Sabo's voice echoed in the conference room, causing all the senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army present to open their mouths and look at Sabo in disbelief. Even Dorag, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, was shocked by Sabo's words. They knew that Sabo had lost his childhood memories, but they never thought that Sabo would have such a relationship with Ace and Luffy. Sabo ignored the gazes of the others, stared at Drago and said, Boss, I'm going to Naval Headquarters. I'm going to save Ace and Luffy. When Drago heard the words, he no longer hesitated at all, and immediately said, Vote. Those who agree to the Revolutionary Army's participation in this war, raise their hands. After speaking, Dorag was the first to raise his hand, and Sabo followed closely. Seeing this situation, most of the senior executives present raised their hands hesitantly. Seeing this, Drago took a deep breath and looked around in a deep voice. Since the majority agrees, then our Revolutionary Army will participate in this war. New World, Red Force. After telling Shanks what happened to Subjugating Archipelago, Beckman asked in a deep voice with a cigarette in his mouth. Shanks, what are you going to do? Shanks said without hesitation. Must go to war. Whether it's because of Deputy Captain Rayleigh or because of Luffy. We can't just sit back and watch. Beckman was not surprised by this, nodded and asked. So, what about Kaido and Charlotte Linlin? If the two of them do anything during this war, there is nothing we can do to stop them. Shanks' face was extremely gloomy, and he finally spoke after a long silence. Can't handle that much anymore. Right now it's the most important thing for us to be involved in this war and get Vice Captain Rayleigh and Luffy out. They've put an arm on Luffy, and Shanks can still watch him get killed by Marine. Beckman nodded slowly. In that case, let's start preparing. This war is about to break out. Mariajoy, World Government Conference Room. After learning the details of what happened to Subjugating Archipelago, the angry roar of the five elders began to be heard in the conference room. Obai, Kizaru, how dare they do such a thing? Killed 2 celestial dragons and enslaved 1 celestial dragons. The most important thing is that Kizaru, as Marine Admiral, actually let go Obai. Those Marines, are you trying to rebel? One of the 5 elders walked back and forth in the conference room, his face full of rage and murderous intent. Even though Obai killed the CP9 officers and members, the 5 elders still gave Obai the title of 7 warlords of the sea. The purpose is to make Obai obedient, at least for a short time, not to make any bad things happen. But no one could have imagined. That guy Obai is so bold. The dignified world noble celestial dragons was killed by his understatement. He even wore a collar around the neck of the Zaluria Palace. You must know the photos and newspapers about the celestial dragons being enslaved by Obai in Zaluria Palace, with the help of the newspapers who are afraid that things will not be big enough. It has spread to every corner of the world. After this incident, in the hearts of others, the status of celestial dragons may no longer be as high as it once was. The most unacceptable thing for the 5 elders is Marine Admiral Kizaru, and Marine Vice Admiral Momoshige Gion has already arrived at Subjugating Archipelago. In the end, he turned a blind eye to what Obai had done, and had no intention of killing Obai at all. Instead, let him do his best in the Subjugating Archipelago. Isn't this a betrayal of their world government? The furious 5 elders roared again. No, I'm going to let that Sengoku guy take people to the Subjugating Archipelago himself. No matter what the price is, we must kill that Obai. When the voice fell, the 5 elders even wanted to dial Sengoku's phone bug. However, it was finally stopped by another 5 elders. Seeing the doubt in his eyes, the curly-haired 5 elders said expressionlessly. Now is not the time for Marine to deal with Obai. Marine guys, there are more important things to do. Hearing this, the knife-wielding 5 elders who roared just now frowned deeply and asked with a cold face. What is more important than our world government? They Marines are just a dog raised by our world government. If this dog is useless, what does our world government keep them for? These words of the knife-wielding 5 elders speak to all the 5 elders. Even if they never said it clearly. But in their hearts, Marine is really no different from a dog raised by the world government. The meaning of Marine's existence has never been to maintain justice, nor to protect the safety of the so-called ordinary people. Marine's first rule is to ensure the rule of the world government. If anyone dares to provoke the world government, Marine will kill him immediately. But what Kizaru and Gion are doing now clearly violates Marine's rule. Could it be that this guy is still trying to explain to Marine? Feeling the gazes of the other 4 guys, the curly-haired 5 elders shook his head slightly and said. Kong has explained to me just now that Marine is not just going to deal with the Whitebeard pirates in the next battle. Because of the arrest of Pluton Rayleigh and Straw Hat Luffy, there is a high probability that the remnants of the Roger Pirates, the Red Hair Pirates, and the Revolutionary Army will be involved. In this way, Marine alone will never be able to resist the alliance of these forces. Even if Kong brings people into the war, I'm afraid they won't be able to destroy those forces. Curly-haired 5 elders looked around and saw that the other 3 were silently thinking. Only the knife-wielding 5 elders who wanted to clamor for Sengoku to take someone to deal with Obai just now. At this time, he looked at him angrily and said, "What does this have to do with Obai? Anyway, Obai is also an unstable factor. Who knows what his purpose is? It's better to let Sengoku take Marine Admiral to kill Obai first, and then go to war with those forces you say." The curly-haired 5 elders stared blankly at each other, looking at him like an idiot. It was not until the 5 elders with the knife couldn't stand it and wanted to get angry, he finally spoke slowly. According to Marine, Obai has the same strength as Marine Admiral. Even, it may be stronger. With Marine's overall strength, it may not be difficult to kill Obai, but who can guarantee that Marine will not suffer heavy casualties? The knife-wielding 5 elders curled their lips upon hearing this, and said nonchalantly. Who knows if this is Marine's excuse? What if Marine wants to do something unfavorable to our world government through Obai? That being said, the knife-wielding 5 elders also accepted this guy's explanation. But the curly-haired 5 elders shook their heads. If only Aokiji said it alone, there might be an error. But Kizaru is the second Marine Admiral to say so, and there's a good chance it will be true. The most important thing for Marine now is to destroy the Whitebeard pirates, the Roger pirates, the Red Hair pirates, and the Revolutionary Army guys. To deal with the alliance of these forces, even if Kong leads people to help Marine, there is not much chance of winning. Maybe in the end, we, the 5 elders, need to be involved in person. Still need their 5 elders in this war. After the curly-haired 5 elders finished speaking, it was the turn of the other 3 5 elders to frown. You must know that since they became the 5 elders, they have long been accustomed to being at the top, leaving everything to Marine or the CP organization to handle. These people, they just need to stay comfortably in Mariajoy and give orders. I just didn't expect that the 5 elders would need them to end the battle in person. On the contrary, the knife-wielding 5 elders who had been screaming just now, his eyes lit up in an instant. No problem. I agree with the proposal. The Whitebeard pirates, the remnants of the Roger pirates, and the Red Hair pirates have never been my eyes. But that Revolutionary Army has been making trouble for our world government over the years. Now that I finally have the opportunity, of course I won't let the other party go. The curly-haired 5 elders nodded in agreement. This guy finally said something sensible. Although he was still excited about being able to participate in this war, at least what he said made sense. For the world government, no matter how big a move the pirates in New World make. In fact, the impact on their world government can be said to be minimal. But the Revolutionary Army is different. The Revolutionary Army headed by Monkey D. Drago has been touching the bottom line of their world government all these years. If it wasn't for the fact that the base camp of the Revolutionary Army was not found, the world government has already sent people to destroy their Revolutionary Army. The curly-haired 5 elders saw that no one objected to their proposal, and immediately looked around and said in a deep voice. If that's the case, let's get ready. We, the 5 elders, have been hiding behind the scenes for so long that those guys have forgotten the horrors of our 5 elders. Just take this opportunity to let them take a good look. For our world government, all forces can be destroyed easily. Dressrosa, Royal Palace, Young Master, Marine has let us know again that we are going to naval headquarters now. Don Quixote family cadre, Torapal quickly walked to Doflamingo with a runny nose and said. But his words did not surprise Doflamingo. Instead, Doflamingo couldn't help but chuckle. Go on, go. The Marine guys, this time is really in a hurry. But no wonder, at the same time provoke the Whitebeard pirates, the Roger pirates remnants, and even Shanks Red Hair pirates. Just relying on Marine's strength to deal with these people, I'm afraid it's not enough. Doflamingo had a look of schadenfreude on his face. He didn't know what was so special about Straw Hat Luffy that it was worth having Marine execute him publicly alongside Firefist Ace and Pluton Rayleigh. After all, in addition to the Marine executives, there are the 5 elders. There are very few guys who know Straw Hat Luffy's background at this time. But that didn't stop Doflamingo from giving Straw Hat Luffy a high look. After all, in this world, background is also an indispensable force. He, Doflamingo, has been able to rule Dressrosa stably and steadily for so many years. Isn't it because of his special relationship with the world government? Seeing Doflamingo's reaction, Torapal asked curiously. Young Master, do you still have to respond to Marine's call and go to naval headquarters? With the current situation, if Marine can't win this war, it will be very tragic. Doflamingo nodded in agreement. Whether it is the Whitebeard pirates, the Roger pirates, or the Red Hair pirates, naval headquarters will never sit back and watch the public execution of Ace and Pluton Rayleigh. The Whitebeard and Shanks guys will be heading to naval headquarters to rescue them. In this way, a war is inevitable. If you are on the wrong team in this war, the end will also be very miserable. Only, Doflamingo said with a grin. If that's the case, it's even more necessary to participate in this war. Torapal gave Doflamingo a surprised look. Having said all that, is it still necessary to respond to Marine's call? If Marine Luo buy in this war, then their Don Quixote family will also be affected, and they will pay the price for it. After hearing Torapal's question, a strange smile appeared on Doflamingo's face. Don't worry, Torapal. In this war, the ultimate victor will definitely be Marine. Torapal wondered why Doflamingo believed in Marine so much. You must know that Marine has provoked 2 New World 4 Emperors groups at the same time, and even the crew of those One Piece. Even though Marine has a very powerful force, in the face of such a terrifying lineup, can Marine really achieve the final victory? Doflamingo, who consciously found out the truth, was in a good mood, so he didn't mind explaining it to Torapal. Marine has a role in helping the world government maintain its rule. The world government will never allow Marine to perish until all threats have been removed. If Marine is ever going to lose, the 5 elders are going to come off themselves. The horror of those guys in the 5 elders is not comparable to ordinary people. Hearing this, Tori Bull suddenly realized. Immediately, he looked at Doflamingo eagerly, and he could only say that he was the young master of their Don Quixote family. Now that it is known that Marine will be aided by the 5 elders and be the only victor in this war, what's the point of hesitation? It's done. However, Torapal seemed to have suddenly remembered something, took a breath, looked at Doflamingo and asked. Young master, what's the purpose of that guy named Luobai? After all, whether it is Fire Fist Ace, or Subjugating Archipelago's Pluton Rayleigh and Straw Hat Luffy, it is because of Luobai that Marine is in the hands. If Luobai had no purpose, he wouldn't do such a thing, would he? You must know what Luobai did, but it has already angered the Whitebeard pirates, the Roger pirates, and the Red Hair pirates. If he wants to join Marine or the world government, maybe it's okay to do something like that. But he also killed celestial dragons and enslaved celestial dragons in Subjugating Archipelago. In this way, Luobai is simply offended by both sides. Whether it's the pirates, Marine or the world government, I'm afraid they definitely don't want to let Luobai go. Could Luobai be able to do this kind of thankless thing? Of course not. Doflamingo shook his head very firmly. Even if he has never seen Luobai, he doesn't think Luobai will be a brainless brat. After all, there's no way Marine Admiral can turn a blind eye to what he's done in the Subjugating Archipelago, no brainer. Only, Doflamingo frowned deeply and shook his head. I can't think of what Luobai's purpose is. But I'm pretty sure he must have a very big plan. Even, this war was controlled by Luobai from beginning to end. Torapal was shocked. How could the arrogant young master have such a high opinion of Luobai? That's not something Doflamingo, who once did celestial dragons, could say. However, Torapal was very wise and did not use the identity of celestial dragons to stimulate each other. Without even waiting for him to go on to say something, Doflamingo immediately got up and laughed a few times. Sigh, sigh, sigh. No matter what purpose that guy Luobai has, he will definitely be involved in this war. If that's the case, then go to naval headquarters, won't you understand everything? This war that determines the future world pattern, I will not miss anything. Amazon Lily Kingdom, 9 Snake Island. Snake Princess, why don't you take someone to naval headquarters? The Marines have said that if you refuse Marine's call, they will take away your status as 7 warlords of the sea. The former emperor of the Amazon Lily Kingdom, mother-in-law Gloriosa, looked eagerly at Boya Hancock in front of her. He kept urging the other party to go to naval headquarters quickly. After all, without the identity of 7 warlords of the sea, 9 Snake Island would be a disaster for them. Hancock looked down at her arrogantly and reprimanded. The concubine is the emperor of 9 Snake Island. It's not your turn to point fingers at the concubine. The same goes for the guys at naval headquarters. Granny Gloriosa was a little helpless when she saw this, but her eyes lit up and said, according to my guess, the guy named Obai is likely to go to naval headquarters too. Don't you want to see with your own eyes what kind of man Obai is, who killed celestial dragons and enslaved celestial dragons? Hearing this, Hancock suddenly fell silent, thinking of the shock when he saw the newspaper. Hancock said immediately, "If that's the case, then take a trip to naval headquarters." However, it wasn't because of Marine's summons, but the man named Obai, who got the concubine interested. While New World was surging over the news that Rayleigh and Luffy were arrested. Under Sengoku's orders, the two Marine Admiral, Kizaru and Aokiji, escorting Rayleigh and Luffy, as well as the supernovas captured at the Subjugating archipelago, have reached Impel Down. However, after arriving at Impel Down, Kizaru and Aokiji did not choose to enter. They know very well that once Garp Vice Admiral learns about this, it will definitely be a huge blow. For a Garp Vice Admiral who had spent most of his life for Marine, the fact that his two grandchildren were to be publicly executed together was too cruel. Also, Kizaru and Aokiji knew very well that the reason why Marshal Sengoku entrusted them with the task of escorting Rayleigh and Luffy. They even kept them in Impel Down until they were publicly executed. Not to prevent those guys from the Whitebeard pirates and Roger pirates from coming to prison, but to guard against Garp Vice Admiral. A long time passed, and finally Aokiji said with a sigh, "Let's go, we have to face it sooner or later anyway." Kizaru shrugged when he heard the words, but there was a serious look in his eyes. "I just hope Garp Vice Admiral doesn't do anything he doesn't want to see, otherwise, Kizaru wouldn't have let it go on such a big thing." Even Aokiji, who has always admired Garp Vice Admiral, is absolutely impossible to lose his mind. While Kizaru and Aokiji were escorting Rayleigh, Luffy and others into Impel Down, the Warden Magellan also took the initiative to bring people to greet him after receiving the news. Looking at the supernovas behind the two Marine Admiral, Magellan also had a rare smile on his face. "Kizaru Admiral, Aokiji Admiral, you've wiped out all the so-called supernovas." Kizaru smiled proudly when he heard this, and said frivolously, "How about Magellan? You haven't seen each other for such a long time, are you happy that so many prisoners were sent to you as soon as we met?" Magellan pouted and didn't answer. Kizaru was still as wretched as ever. On the other hand, Aokiji asked with some doubts, "Magellan, why didn't you see Shiryu?" Magellan's face changed when he heard the words, and under the gaze of Kizaru and Aokiji, he finally said helplessly, "That guy Shiryu, now he likes to kill prisoners more and more, so I'll put him in custody temporarily." Kizaru and Aokiji looked at each other and immediately noticed what Magellan was thinking. Regarding Shiryu, Magellan did not report it to naval headquarters, otherwise, the end may not be as simple as temporary detention. And the reason why Magellan did this, I am afraid there is still hope for Shiryu. But this is Impel Down after all, they should not point fingers at Magellan. Magellan didn't hesitate, and when he led them to the interior of Impel Down, a loud laugh came over before he had gone far. "Kuzan, Pelusalino, did you two boys come here to catch some big shot? Let me see, who the hell is that deserves the two of you to come to Impel Down?" As Garp's voice fell, Kizaru and Aokiji's heart became heavy as they watched his approaching figure. Garp found that his words were not answered and couldn't help but be a little puzzled. However, after seeing Luffy behind Kizaru and Aokiji, bound by the shackles made by Seastone, Garp understands everything. Luffy. Looking at Luffy, whose arms were wrapped in gauze and drooping weakly, Garp's eyes almost popped out, and he couldn't help but scream. Luffy looked up at Garp in despair, and shouted with a look of hopelessness, "Grandfather!" Garp's footsteps stopped, feeling Kizaru, Aokiji, and Magellan's gaze, and he finally understood. Why do you need two Marine admirals to escort a group of pirates? It's not that there are any dangerous people among them, but because of Luffy's identity, they are taking precautions against themselves. After a brief silence, Garp looked at Kizaru and Aokiji in front of him expressionlessly, and his voice became extremely hoarse for a moment. "Kuzan, Pulsalino, aren't you going to explain to me, what the hell is going on?" Aokiji and Kizaru looked at each other, and they could clearly see the helpless and heavy look in each other's eyes. After all, in order not to make things unexpected, Marine wanted to publicly announce the execution of Luffy and Ace, but kept it from Garp Vice Admiral. Seeing this happening suddenly now, it's no wonder Garp Vice Admiral can take it. In the end, Kuzan looked at Garp and said with difficulty. Garp Vice Admiral, Marshal Sengoku decided to publicly execute Luffy, Ace, and Rayleigh on the execution stand at Naval Headquarters. The voice fell, and the scene suddenly fell into an extremely strange silence. All eyes were on Garp, wondering how the Marine hero would react. However, including the two Marine Admiral Kizaru and Aokiji, and even Magellan, the warden of Impel Down. The mood at this time can be said to be extremely complicated. On the one hand, he couldn't bear to let Garp watch his two grandsons being publicly executed at the same time. On the other hand, they are taking it seriously, for fear that Garp will betray Marine. Strictly speaking, even if you look at the entire Marine, I am afraid that there is not a Marine who does not respect the Marine hero Garp Vice Admiral. It could even be said that Garp Vice Admiral is a benchmark for Marine. If even this benchmark betrays Marine, it will have a huge impact on Marine. However, even the Commander-in-Chief of the three armed forces, Kong, has spoken in person, and this matter is not something that Marine can decide. He. Garp squeezed a few deep laughter from between his teeth, and his face began to change back and forth. Under everyone's attention, Garp's eyes swept across Aokiji and Kizaru. Kuzan, Pulsalino, so you too, the guy from Sengoku sent over to watch this old man, right? Aokiji immediately defended after hearing the words. It's not Garp Vice Admiral, we are here to prevent the Whitebeard pirates and the remnants of the Roger pirates from impelling them down. Kizaru, who was beside him, quickly nodded in agreement. Kuzan is right, Garp Vice Admiral, you misunderstood us, and you misunderstood Marshal Sengoku. Garp didn't soften the slightest because of their explanation, but a mocking expression appeared on his face. It's true that Garp doesn't usually like to use his brain, but that doesn't mean he doesn't. To prevent the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates and Roger pirates. With Garp and Magellan around, how could anyone make a big noise about Impel Down? Garp looked at them half-smile and asked. Since that's the case, now that everyone has been sent over, don't you plan to return to Naval Headquarters? This. Aokiji and Kizaru glanced at each other without showing any trace, only to feel a headache about it. Can't we just work in harmony with each other? Even if you see through the purpose of their coming to Impel Down, at least don't expose it in person, right? But in fact Aokiji and Kizaru are also very clear, and now Garp Vice Admiral is willing to question them, it has proved that he still has a hard time with Marine. Otherwise, who can bear the fact that both grandchildren are going to be executed and remain indifferent? Aokiji sighed inwardly and defended. The Garp Vice Admiral, the two of us are tasked with escorting them to Naval Headquarters when the public execution time is approaching. So, Aokiji didn't finish his words, but everyone present could understand what he meant. However, Garp just stared at him blankly. Is it Sengoku's order? Before Aokiji could answer, Kizaru slowly shook his head and said. The order this time was given by the Commander-in-Chief Kong himself. According to Commander-in-Chief Kong, he will also be present in person in the subsequent war. Hearing this, Garp's expression suddenly changed. You must know that Kong, as the previous Marshal Marine, can be regarded as a teacher who taught Garp. He also knew what Kizaru meant. That is, the order given by Kong himself means that the direction of this war is not only controlled by their Marines. And he, the Marine hero, can never change Kong's decision. Garp took a deep look at Kizaru and asked in a deep voice. Then did Sengoku say that he wanted me to return to Naval Headquarters? Kizaru replied without hesitation. No, Marshal Sengoku said. You can stay with us until the day you escort them back to Naval Headquarters, if you wish. After all, both of Garp's grandsons are about to be publicly executed at the same time. If Garp is not allowed to accompany them in the last few days, I am afraid that Garp does not want to betray Marine, and will definitely betray Marine. Garp nodded. Then lock them up first. Aokiji and Kizaru looked at each other and breathed a long sigh of relief. At least, Garp Vice Admiral doesn't seem to be betraying Marine for now. Under Magellan's arrangement, Luffy and Ace were directly transferred to two adjacent cages, which could provide Garp Vice Admiral with better companionship services. And after putting Rayleigh and other supernovas in custody, Aokiji and Kizaru wisely did not disturb Garp, but chose to take turns guarding Impel Down to prevent any accidents. Garp didn't care about their actions either. In all fairness, Judging from what happened now, Marine did not arrest Garp and imprison him temporarily. It has already explained the prestige that Garp has, and Sengoku and their trust in Garp. It's just that Garp will eventually fail their trust, which is something no one can guarantee. All they can do is to make Garp suffer as little damage as possible when Garp wants to betray. Garp stayed alone for a long time, and finally chose to leave the room and go to the cage where Ace and Luffy were. After seeing Garp's actions, Kizaru turned his head to look at Aokiji and asked, "What should we do?" Aokiji, who was a little irritable, put on the blindfold and said casually, "What can I do? Wait here for the day of execution. I believe in Garp Vice Admiral, his commitment to justice will never disappoint anyone." Kizaru shrugged helplessly, but didn't bother with other things. Things have grown to this point, and they are no longer within the control of the Marine Admiral. As for believing in Garp Vice Admiral, Kizaru says he doesn't have the same confidence Aokiji has in Garp Vice Admiral. After Garp arrived at the place where Ace and Luffy were being held, the two of them could be clearly heard talking. "Luffy, why did you get caught too? Could that guy Obai have his eye on you too? How do you know it's Obai? What else could it be because I was handed over to Marine by him? But, I've never seen him before. Why did he do this? Besides, even my partner was taken away by that fool. I also didn't see Obai before he handed it over to Marine. Didn't he do it anyway? As for your partner who was taken away, is it a woman?" "It's Nami." Not surprising then. Quote, "No matter what, I must get Nami back. She is my navigator." "Take it back. Didn't you just say that Marine was going to execute you with me?" Luffy was silent, no brainer than he could figure out what Marine's public execution meant. After all, when Luffy was in Logue Town, he almost got his head chopped off by Smoker. A Colonel Marine could push him like that, not to mention an order from Naval Headquarters himself. After seeing Luffy's reaction, Ace couldn't help but sighed and said, "I originally thought that at least you would not encounter this situation, but now you have come in." Ace's mood is extremely complicated. When he heard that Teach wanted to attack Luffy in Magic Valley Town, what Ace thought was that he had to protect Luffy. As a result, it's good now that the person I want to protect will be publicly executed with me. And the most unacceptable thing for Ace is that his own father, Whitebeard, will never sit idly by. As a result, I don't know how many companions will die in Naval Headquarters. Just when Ace was secretly remorseful and Luffy was in great pain, Garp finally strode in. "Old man, grandfather," Ace and Luffy murmured almost simultaneously when they saw Garp's face hidden in the darkness. Garp looked at the two grandsons in the cage, bound by the shackles made by Seastone, and didn't move for a long time. I don't know how long years have passed, and Garp finally spoke with difficulty, speaking in an extremely hoarse and complicated tone. "Why don't you two follow the path that the old man has arranged for you? Why didn't you listen to the old man and join Marine? Why do you have to go out to sea and become a pirate? Pirates are not worthy of pity, but the family is different. Can you tell the old man what the old man should do?" In the end, both Ace and Luffy could clearly tell the difference, and Garp's voice had become a little choked up. It was at this time that Garp's face, which was shrouded in darkness, was finally seen clearly by them. The old face was filled with tears at some point in time. And Garp, the famous Marine hero, seems to have become a little stooped. "Old man, grandfather." When Ace and Luffy saw this situation, their hearts were instantly filled with pain. Of course they knew exactly how much torment Garp was going through in the face of this situation. Obviously they are family, but because of their respective identities, they stand on absolute opposites. And all of this is entirely caused by their reckless actions. From the moment they went out to sea to become pirates, they never thought about how this would affect Garp. Looking at the two grandsons in the cage, Garp's eyes gradually lost focus. Stand up to justice, or betray Marine. Faced with this situation, what choice should the old man make? If possible, Garp at this time really hopes that he can go back to 10 years ago. No matter what the price is, make sure the two, Ace and Luffy, follow their plans and join Marine. Instead of this now, I can only be tortured between my family and justice. Under Aokiji and Kizaru's fears, Garp Vice Admiral did not make any move to betray Marine. It's just that the two of them could clearly feel that as the public execution date approached, Garp Vice Admiral's face became more and more gloomy. There is even more surging anger in my heart, as if it can burst out at any time. Aokiji and Kizaru reported the situation to Sengoku, but according to Sengoku, it will be fully recovered after Garp Vice Admiral vented in the subsequent war. Since Marshal Sengoku said so, of course Aokiji and Kizaru have no other opinions. However, the two of them could also guess that the reason why Marshal Sengoku became less worried that Garp Vice Admiral would betray Marine. On the one hand, he has a deep trust in this comrade who has fought side by side for decades. But the most important reason is because Marshal Sengoku got a promise from the Commander-in-Chief of the three armies, Kong. Under the negotiation of Commander Kong, the five elders have made it clear that if there is any accident in this war, the five elders, who represent the highest power in the world government, will personally participate in this war. Although the two Marine Admiral did not know what power the five elders possessed. But just by looking at the attitude change of Marshal Sengoku before and after, you can guess that with the participation of the five elders, the ultimate victor in this war will definitely be the Marine. However, if possible, Aokiji and Kizaru don't want to see Garp Vice Admiral betray Marine anyway. On the day before the public executions of Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh, it was also time for Aokiji and Kizaru to escort them to naval headquarters. Garp just stared blankly watching the sailors escort them to the warship, and then sat on the deck in silence. Seeing this situation, Magellan asked worriedly, "Aokiji Admiral, Kizaru Admiral. Garp Vice Admiral shouldn't do bad things, right?" Aokiji and Kizaru exchanged glances after hearing the words, then slowly shook their heads and said, "No one can tell this kind of thing. Hopefully there won't be any surprises." Magellan sighed helplessly and spread his hands. "It's a pity that I'm still sitting in Impel Down, and I can't participate in this war. This war has decided the fate of our Marines, and the pattern of the New World." As he spoke, a look of envy appeared in Magellan's eyes. The reason why he became the warden of Impel Down, in addition to his own strength. One of the most important reasons is because of the side effects of his devil fruit ability. Magellan often suffers from diarrhea. Otherwise, with such a powerful force, Sengoku, who is Marine Marshal, would not have been able to keep Magellan in Impel Down anyway. Of course Aokiji and Kizaru were well aware of this, and Kizaru reassured him with a wretched smile. "We all have our own responsibilities. Your duty is to make sure that nothing happens to Impel Down." At the end of the day, the envious look in Kizaru's eyes was already superficial. This guy Magellan is really in the midst of blessings. If he, Kizaru, is the warden of this Impel Down, he'll be crazy. Can salted fish paddle in water all the time? Why bother thinking about leaving Impel Down and doing things? Aokiji didn't say much about it, just looked at Magellan and exhorted. "Magellan, you have to pay attention to Shiryu. I think your behavior of imprisoning him is absolutely unacceptable with his character. If this continues, Shiryu may do something bad." Seeing Aokiji talking about serious business, Magellan's face also became serious, nodded to Aokiji and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I will be optimistic about Shiryu. If he really has any dangerous thoughts, I will report it to Marshal Sengoku as soon as possible." Aokiji nodded and didn't say anything more. As the warden of Impel Down, how to deal with Shiryu is still up to Magellan and Marshal Sengoku to decide. If that's the case, then it's not a waste of time. We're going to naval headquarters too, to prepare for the start of this war. Under the watchful eyes of Magellan and a group of Impel Down jailers, Aokiji and Kizaru also boarded the warship and began their journey to naval headquarters. After the warship disappeared, Magellan clutched his stomach and ran quickly, with beads of sweat appearing on his forehead. It shows what kind of pain and torture this Impel Down warden endured just now. The side effects of poisonous fruit are not so easy to bear. Seeing this situation, Domino, the deputy guard on the side, teased Sadi-chan, the guard chief next to him. "Prisoner Magellan is good everywhere, it is the side effect of this devil fruit ability that makes him lose the opportunity to stay in naval headquarters." Sadi-chan nodded in agreement. If there is no such side effect, with the strength of Magellan Warden, even becoming a Marine Admiral is probably not impossible, right? Hearing this, Deputy Warden Hannibal sneered. "Marine Admiral, Magellan, how could he qualify as a Marine Admiral? Even the Impel Down Warden, Magellan's ability to continue to do it is a matter of two things. Hannibal's mood is very bad. He has been trying to please the two Marine Admiral Aokiji and Kizaru these days. Trying to shake Magellan's status as warden in various ways, so that his deputy warden can remove the subtitle. But the result disappointed Hannibal. After saying a lot about Magellan's shortcomings, the two guys, Aokiji and Kizaru, were still indifferent to it and didn't say anything at all. There is still a long way to go to grab the position of Impel down warden from Magellan. Thinking of this, Hannibal snorted coldly, turned and walked towards the interior of Impel down. And Domino and Sadi-chan looked at each other and couldn't help laughing silently. Deputy Warden Hannibal has always been eyeing the position of Warden Magellan, and everyone knows it in Impel down. But even Warden Magellan ignored it and didn't care what Hannibal did, let alone them. On the warship that left Impel down and headed for naval headquarters, the atmosphere that was supposed to be excited for the next public execution turned out to be particularly gloomy. In the final analysis, it is because of the scruples of Garp Vice Admiral. Otherwise, the sailors on the warship would have let go and chatted long ago. After feeling the strange atmosphere on the warship, Rayleigh, whose feet were bound by shackles, looked at Kizaru not far away and said, "Kizaru, are you ready to face this war? The enemies you Marines have to face are far more than you imagine." Rayleigh still hasn't given up on trying to persuade Marine to stop his public executions, and while it's a little less hopeful, there's still some hope. However, after hearing Rayleigh's words, Kizaru laughed. "What's wrong, Rayleigh? Is this starting to get scary? Public execution is something that Roger has experienced, and now it's your turn, the deputy captain of the Roger Pirates." Rayleigh's face changed when he heard the words, but before he could say anything, Aokiji, who was covering his eyes with a blindfold, said lightly, "Not just you, Pluton Rayleigh. And the remnants of the Roger Pirates who want to save you can't escape this fate." Boyle. Rayleigh's face became extremely gloomy for a moment, and that was what he was worried about. Although Rayleigh has been imprisoned in Impel down these days, he can also guess his former partners. After seeing the news that he was going to be publicly executed by Marine, how would he react? That is, those guys don't know Ace's true identity as Roger's son. Otherwise, even if there is no such thing as their own, the remnants of the Roger Pirates will definitely participate in this war. Since Marine is so determined to start this war, it means that they must be fully prepared for this, right? As a remnant of the old days, Rayleigh knows very well what kind of intelligence that Sengoku guy has. It is absolutely impossible for Sengoku to make the decision to publicly execute them without being fully prepared. In this war, it's not just him, Pluton Rayleigh. Ace and Luffy, as well as the pirates involved in this war, are probably in danger. Ace's attention was caught by Rayleigh's conversation with Kizaru and Aokiji, and turned his attention to Rayleigh. He and Rayleigh were not imprisoned together, but through communication with Luffy, it was also clear what had happened since he was imprisoned in Impel Down. Although his own father, Whitebeard, did not announce a high-profile war with Marine. But through Whitebeard's actions of convening various pirate groups under his command, it means that the Whitebeard pirates will never sit back and watch him be executed by Marine. But Ace couldn't make his father change his mind at all. But Ace doesn't want to see what kind of accident happened in this war with his partner who has been with him for several years, and his father who he admires and admires very much. After realizing that he couldn't save this situation, Ace, who was frustrated, looked at Luffy beside him and asked, "Luffy, how is your arm?" Luffy raised his arms bound by the seastone shackles and said bitterly, "Already recovering. When I see that Luobai next time, I must beat him up with my own hands." Luffy didn't deliberately lower his voice, and even raised the volume involuntarily when he said that he wanted to fly Luobai. And this also caused everyone on the deck to look at Luffy. Aokiji and Kizaru glanced at each other, and they could clearly see that each other's faces became very strange. They were really confused. Where did this guy Luffy get the confidence to shoot Luobai? You must know that even the two Marine Admiral can't guarantee that they can defeat Luobai. Moreover, in their previous battle with Luobai, they could sense that Luobai was hiding his strength, although they did not go all out. But if you think about it, you know that Luobai dared to offend the Whitebeard pirates and the world government. If it's not an idiot, it means that Luobai has enough confidence in this. Luobai is clearly not an idiot. Then, it's an idiot, and it's naturally the Straw Hat Luffy who speaks wildly. Even Ace looked at Luffy with a complicated expression. He really envied Luffy's optimistic attitude. In other words, I envy Luffy's nerve-wracking attitude and don't care about what he will face next. However, at this moment, Garp looked at Luffy expressionlessly and said, "Fight Lu Obai. Do you think you can survive?" Luffy said unconvinced. "Who can say this kind of thing? Anyway, no matter what, I must fly Lu Obai. Get Nami back from Lu Obai." Garp didn't answer, but turned his eyes to the distance and looked at the sea in the distance for a long time without saying a word. Still riding on a horse and thinking of robbing someone from Lu Obai, do you think Marine's public execution is joking with you? Or, do you think this execution is the same as what you experienced in Logue Town before? Just relying on your father, Drago, can't save you. Aokiji and Kizaru looked at each other, both speechless at Luffy, the nerve-wracking guy. As for what he just said, grab Nami back from Lu Obai. Since that woman named Nami has fallen into Lu Obai's hands, is she still not allowed to be eaten by Lu Obai? That guy Lu Obai, when it comes to women, never disappoints. The Lu Obai in Luffy's mouth is still in the Subjugating archipelago at this time. In a hotel in Subjugating archipelago, Lu Obai slowly opened his eyes and patted the object pressing on his leg. Feeling that he was being filmed, Nami unconsciously murmured and begged for mercy. Lu Obai smiled softly when he heard the words, pushed Nami away and stood up. Lu Obai clearly remembers how arrogant Nami was at the beginning, and is he not honest now? This kind of thing, really only after being taught a lesson, the other party will know who is the one who has the final say. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, and a flame rose from the forefinger and middle fingers together, igniting the cigarette in his mouth. Call. After exhaling a thick puff of smoke, Lu Obai looked at the chaotic scene in the house, only to feel that his body and mind became more relaxed. The name of Nami's master, naturally, is to make the battle a little more interesting. During these days, Lu Obai did not go to other places, but came to this hotel after walking around with Robin, Khalifa and others. He even bought the entire hotel with a big wave of his hand, so that his battle with Robin and the others would not be affected by others. Lu Obai is very clear that now everyone's eyes are on the public execution tomorrow, whether it is the world government or the major forces of New World. After all, if there is any accident in this war, it will affect the status of Marine and the world government. And for Whitebeard, Shanks, Dorag, and the remnants of the Roger pirates. They definitely don't want to see Ace, Luffy, and Rayleigh die at Marine's hands. I am afraid that no one can imagine that Lu Obai, who single-handedly led to the start of this war that will determine the future world pattern, is now eyeing the big underwater prison in Impel Down. Lu Obai knows very well what kind of prisoners are being held in Impel Down. I am afraid that no one can imagine that Lu Obai, who single-handedly led to the start of this war that will determine the future world pattern, is now eyeing the big underwater prison in Impel Down. This is the benefit of Lu Obai cheat that has not been exposed, and no one will be guarded against this at all. After getting all the devil fruit abilities of those guys and subduing them at the same time, it's time for Lu Obai to come to naval headquarters. Lu Obai's movement made Robin, Nami and others gradually wake up, looking at Lu Obai with a cigarette in his mouth. Robin sat up and stretched out, his enchanting figure could be seen at a glance, but everyone present was already used to it, and naturally they would not lose their temper. Robin looked at Lu Obai with a smile and asked, "Lu Obai, shall we continue? Or, are you okay?" Seeing the black-bellied smile on Robin's face, Lu Obai couldn't help rolling his eyes. Seeing a blush gradually appearing on Robin's face. "Go on, you can't stand it. Also, I have more important things to do next." Hearing this, Robin forcibly restrained the strangeness and asked, "Are you going to get started?" Lu Obai nodded, a flash of excitement flashed in his eyes. "The execution is about to begin, and it's time for us to go to Impel Down. Naval Headquarters, the port of Marineford. All the Marine executives have gathered here, just to wait for the arrival of the ship that escorts the Firefist Ace, the Straw Hat Luffy, and the Pluton Rayleigh. Even the 7 warlords of the sea, who had accepted Marine's call and had come to Naval Headquarters, were honestly waiting at the port at this time. However, there are always people who can't be idle, and Doflamingo is clearly one of them. Doflamingo, wearing sunglasses and an open feather coat, turned his head to look at Moria next to him and said with a few smiles. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Moria, why haven't you been kicked out of the 7 warlords of the sea? First defeated by obai, and then defeated by that straw hat Luffy, isn't the existence of a guy like you lowering the gold content of 7 warlords of the sea? Hearing this, Moria's face instantly turned extremely gloomy, and the other 7 warlords of the sea near them also turned their attention to Moria. Whether it's Boa Hancock, or Hawkeye Mahawk, they were all very curious about obai, who was expelled from the 7 warlords of the sea by the world government for blatantly killing and even enslaving celestial dragons. Among the 7 warlords of the sea present, Moria, Bartholomew Kuma and obai were also in contact, and they wanted to know. Is obai as rumored to have the same strength as Marine Admiral? Even, the reason why Doflamingo took the initiative to provoke Moria is to explore this. Moria, who sensed what Doflamingo was thinking, snorted coldly. Don't think you have anything special. If you met obai, you would know what a monster is. Moria still clearly remembers how small she looked in front of obai. Even when facing Kaido at the beginning, Moria was not so powerless. After hearing Moria's comment, Doflamingo couldn't help raising his eyebrows. His eyes under the sunglasses were full of surprise. Doflamingo knew very well that Moria was still very proud. Even if he was defeated by Kaido at first, and even all his friends were killed by Kaido, Moria has always been looking for an opportunity to seek revenge for Kaido. Although Doflamingo doesn't think Moria has the qualifications and strength to seek revenge from Kaido, this mentality is still very good. However, after being defeated by obai, Moria admits that he is a monster. From this point of view, that guy obai does have a very powerful power. Doflamingo chuckled a few times and said to himself in his heart. In this way, tomorrow's war, I am afraid it will become more interesting. While Doflamingo was talking to Moria, something strange also appeared among the marine executives ahead. As an admiral candidate with Gion, the naval headquarters elite Vice Admirals Kagukage walked to the vicinity of Gion, looked at her and smiled ingratiatingly. Gion, I heard that you went to trouble obai before, but was kidnapped by him. Did that guy obai do anything bad to you? The voices fell, and the expressions of the marine executives present suddenly became strange. Although Sengoku wants to help Gion hide what happened before, he is not the only one who knows what happened. After all, some rumors came out, which caused all the marine executives to feel weird. After all, Gion is a flower of their naval headquarters. This flower has been beautiful for so many years, but it was picked mercilessly by a pirate in obai. Others are okay, and can forcibly restrain their curiosity. After all, no matter what, this kind of thing is not good for Gion after all. Neither Sengoku nor anyone else wanted to distract Gion, the headquarters, elite marine vice admiral, at such a critical moment. But the totals are different. You must know that Jake has proposed to Gion a lot over the years, but Gion has never had a smile on his face even once. When I heard that obai had kidnapped Gion, there was a high possibility that something unspeakable happened between the two. Plus only felt that the hat on his head suddenly changed the color. The point is that the bonus doesn't want to dye this thing green. How could obai, that pirate, dare to do such a thing? However, what Kaji didn't expect was that after hearing his question, Gion didn't even look at him, just said coldly. What's the matter with you? Does the matter between me and obai have anything to do with you? Hearing this, Kaji became anxious and wanted to continue to get close to Gion, but Gion just gave him a cold look, which made Kaji stop shyly. Gion, how can your business have nothing to do with me? Don't forget, I've proposed to you hundreds of times over the years, and I'm just waiting for you to agree. Gion's eyes flashed a ray of coldness, and her palm was already on the hilt of the saber at her waist, and she scolded mercilessly. Plus, if you do something like this again, I won't hold you back because you're also Marine Vice Admiral. The voice fell, and the complexion of Kaji suddenly became extremely ugly. He could clearly feel the chill emanating from Gion's body, showing that what she said just now was not as simple as joking. If the extra plan is really messing around and chasing Gion, Gion doesn't mind giving this wretched guy 2 knives. However, in such a situation, the addition is unacceptable no matter what. After being a licking dog for so many years, Jake has been dreaming of licking until the end of everything. In the end, before he even licked his hand, Gion was eaten and wiped clean by that pirate Obai. And looking at the current situation, it seems that Gion still doesn't reject Obai as much as he imagined. What the hell is going on with this horse? Thinking of Gion's initiative to send it to Luobai's mouth, he, the Marine Vice Admiral, was constantly rejected, and the licking dog finally woke up, and he couldn't bear it any longer. Gion, do you know what you're talking about? Could it be that my dignified admiral candidate, the elite Vice Admiral of Naval Headquarters, is no better than a mere pirate? Just a guy like Luobai, who is qualified to get you. The voice fell, and the scene suddenly fell into an extremely strange silence. Whether it was the marine executives or the 7 warlords of the sea, they all turned their attention to Gion and Cake. In particular, Doflamingo, who is a man of music himself, looked at Gion with great interest. He also heard the interesting story between Gion and Luobai. He thought it was made up. But looking at the reaction of the totals now, there is a high probability that this is what really happened. That guy Luobai is really terrifying when it comes to women. Under the gazes of everyone, Gion, whose face was a little red with anger, instantly pulled out the saber from his waist, and slashed towards the extra meter on the side. Laugh. When the sound of the blade ripping through the air came, Kaji's eyes suddenly widened, and he hurriedly avoided Gion's attack. He really did not expect that the goddess Gion, whom he had been pursuing for so many years, would slash him with a knife because of Luobai, a pirate. Seeing that the ground was slashed by Gion with a knife, the anger in Jaji's heart grew even stronger, and he said without choosing a word. Gion, you actually attacked me because of a pirate. That guy Luobai is the pirate you hate the most. As Marine Vice Admiral, that pirate doesn't even have the qualifications to compare with me. As soon as the words of the addition fell, the 2 voices sounded in unison. To shut up. With a guy like you, you still want to compare yourself with Luobai. All the marine executives and 7 warlords of the sea present, their eyes wandered over Gion and Hancock. Obviously, the 2 voices angrily rebuking the addition belonged to the 2 of them. Seeing Gion's gaze at Kaji getting more and more annoyed, in order not to make the conflict between them more intense, Sengoku even looked at Kaji and said solemnly, "Total, you've crossed the line. These words shouldn't come out of your mouth." Hearing this, Jaji was in a hurry. But, Marshal Sengoku. Before he could finish speaking, Sengoku waved his hand to interrupt what he was about to say, stared at him and said, "Additionally, if you continue like this, you should go back first." Seeing the serious look on Marshal Sengoku's face, although Kaji was still very unwilling, he could only snorted and turned away. Looking at the back of Kaji, Sengoku only felt a little headache. Plus, why did he become so clueless when he got involved with Gion? Knowing that there is a special relationship between Gion and Luobai, how would you say such a thing in front of so many people? Could it be that he wanted to force Gion to leave Marine at such a critical moment? What a fool! Sengoku sighed inwardly, turned his head to look at Gion and said solemnly, "Gion, no matter what your thoughts are, you must not do anything bad until this war is over." Gion put the saber back on his waist and nodded silently in agreement. Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. Tomorrow is the public execution time for Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh. He didn't want to see a conflict within Marine at a time like this anyway. Gion ignored Sengoku's thoughts and turned his attention to Hancock. After all, Hancock, when she heard the extra plan to humiliate Luobai just now, had exactly the same reaction as her own. Even if Gion doesn't really recognize that she is Luobai's woman now, but anyway, there is already a truth between them. What kind of mentality does Hancock hold to speak for Luobai? When Gion looked at Hancock, he found that Hancock was also watching him, and the Pirate Queen was full of pride. Even at naval headquarters, the arrogance didn't diminish in the slightest. Humph! Gion and Hancock snorted coldly in their hearts at the same time, and then turned their eyes to other places at the same time. It's just that they are both curious about each other and want to explore more things. At this moment, a warship entering the port interrupted their random thoughts. And the arrival of this warship also cheered everyone present. The protagonist who will be publicly executed tomorrow has finally arrived. After the sailors stepped off the warship one after another and escorted Firefist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh down, Sengoku nodded at the sea soldier in front of him and said solemnly, "Put the three of them in custody first, and there must be no accidents before tomorrow." "Yes, Marshal Sengoku." After receiving the order from Sengoku, the sea soldiers did not hesitate, and pushed the three of them and left here. After looking at the three figures bound by shackles, Doflamingo turned his head and looked at Moria with a playful expression. "Moria, is that the one who beat you just now?" According to Doflamingo, nature is the Straw Hat Luffy. Even if it is defeated by Obai, even Marine Admiral said that Obai's strength is not inferior to them. But being defeated by something like Luffy in the Straw Hat, what is the magical development? Has Moria, the seven warlords of the sea, fallen to this point now? Aware of Doflamingo's sarcasm, Moria's face suddenly became extremely ugly, and even said, "If it wasn't for being injured by Obai, I could have killed the Straw Hat Luffy easily." Doflamingo was noncommittal about this, but thought it was Moria's mouth. No matter what, he has been defeated by the opponent. Sigh, sigh, sigh. How interesting. I am now looking forward more and more to tomorrow's public execution. I just don't know, will something more interesting happen? In the end, Doflamingo glanced at Garp Vice Admiral who had just disembarked from the warship, and clearly saw that the other party's face was very gloomy. Seeing this situation, Doflamingo looked back and glanced at Virgo, who was summoned by Marine. Then he turned around and left the port with a big smile. The rest of the Shichibukai turned around and left. All they had to do was wait for the public execution to begin tomorrow. However, before leaving, Hancock glanced at Guion with a look of contempt in his eyes. After noticing Hancock's gaze, Guion did not hesitate to catch up with Hancock's figure and walked on the same path as her. Guion wants to find out, what exactly is this woman Hancock trying to do? Sengoku took Garp to the marshal's office, and the rest of the marine executives from Vice Admiral rushed back to get them all ready for tomorrow's war. The marine executives also knew that Marshal Sengoku had something to say to Garp Vice Admiral, and naturally they would not bother him without thinking. Looking at Sengoku's back, leading the way, Garp's eyes were dark. After reaching the marshal's office, Sengoku closed the door and stared at Garp in front of him, before finally speaking in a deep voice. "Garp, what are your thoughts on tomorrow's public execution of Qian Li's?" Garp raised his eyes expressionlessly to meet Sengoku, and under his gaze, he spoke indifferently. "What do I think? Does it still matter now? After all, in order to guard against me, you Marine Admiral made the act of having two Marine Admirals guard me." Hearing this, Sengoku's face suddenly became a little embarrassed, but it disappeared immediately. In any case, Sengoku, as Marshal Marine, has to think about Marine as a whole. Things have developed to such an extent that even Garp, an old comrade who has fought side by side for decades, can't let Sengoku open up. But Sengoku also knew exactly what kind of pain Garp had suffered these days. Seeing that the smile on Garp's face was no longer there, Sengoku sighed helplessly. "Garp, this matter is no longer up to me, Marshal Marine, to have the final say. Neither Commander Kong nor the Five Elders will allow any accidents to occur in this public execution. If someone wants to sabotage tomorrow's public execution, Commander Kong and the Five Elders will not spare each other. When I say that, do you understand what I mean?" Of course Garp understands. Sengoku's meaning is obvious. If he wants to destroy tomorrow's public execution, then his identity as a marine hero will no longer be able to let himself escape safely. Even, it is very likely that he will die in this war. However, an adopted grandson and a biological grandson will all be publicly executed tomorrow. Can he, a marine hero, really sit back and watch? Garp nodded nonchalantly. "I understand. Is there anything else?" Seeing Sengoku shaking his head, Garp didn't waste any time and walked out of the office. Seeing that the door of the office was closed again, Sengoku was silent for a long time before finally letting out a long sigh. "Garp, if Ace hadn't become a pirate, I would never have targeted him, the son of the Pirate King. But why didn't you stop him? Did your grandson Luffy also become a pirate?" Marine Marshal Sengoku sighed in the office, and the rest of the marine executives also started to get busy. After all, Everyone knows very well what kind of forces will be present when the Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh are publicly executed tomorrow. Judging from the information Marine has obtained, whether it is the Whitebeard pirates or the Red Hair pirates, some changes have already begun. Only the remnants of the Roger pirates and the Revolutionary Army led by Drago had not heard any news at this time. It's not that these guys won't be involved in this war, it's that Marine's intelligence organization has never collected any information on their tracks. However, with the Straw Hats Luffy and Pluton Rayleigh around, the Revolutionary Army and the remnants of the Roger pirates will never sit idly by. Only with the assurances from the Commander-in-Chief Kong, and the 5 elders who also said that Marine would be involved in the war when he was at a disadvantage. What really worried the Marine executives were the other 2 New World 4 Emperor's regiments. Will the Beasts Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates also participate in this war? If Kaido and Charlotte Linlin are also involved, the war will be completely out of control, and no one can guarantee how it will end. But at the same time, Hancock looked at Guion who was following him, and immediately reprimanded with a cold face. A Marine Vice Admiral, what are you doing with your concubine if you don't prepare for tomorrow's war? Hancock said it rudely, and almost wrote Guion on his face for not doing what Marine Vice Admiral should have done. And Guion responded with a blank expression. Most of the things have been arranged properly, and I don't need to be responsible for the rest. However, is a mere 7 warlords of the sea qualified to direct me to do things? When the words fell, Guion and Hancock looked at each other, and both of them could clearly see the spark in each other's eyes. Guion and Hancock have noticed each other since the 2 of them spoke up for Luobai at the same time, since they made a statement to humiliate Luobai. And the reason why Guion left with Hancock after Marine executives disbanded was to find out what Hancock wanted to do. Even if Guion wanted to deny that she was Luobai's woman, she still had to speak according to the facts. After hearing Guion's questioning, Hancock raised his chin directly at Guion in front of him, pointed his finger at Guion, and said proudly, no matter what the concubine said or did, she would be forgiven in the end. Because the concubine is so beautiful. He. Guion looked at Hancock and sneered a few times, his face full of disdain, although he had long heard that Hancock, the pirate queen, was very proud. Moreover, she has absolute confidence in her own appearance, and will often say such confident words. But after experiencing it for real, Guion realized that this rumor is absolutely very true. The arrogance of this pirate queen is by no means comparable to that of ordinary people. Only, Guion looked at Hancock and said blankly, a woman like you is really suitable to meet Luobai. Then you will know that your so-called pride is not worth mentioning in front of Luobai. Speaking of this, I'm curious, what kind of behavior will the arrogant pirate queen look like after being tamed? When it comes to the end, Guion even gritted his teeth, but not against Hancock, but against that shameless Luobai. At the beginning, I just called Luobai and after being rejected, I made 2 provocative words, but what did that Luobai do? Guion will never forget what kind of experience he suffered in Luobai's hands. Hancock, the pirate queen, looks much worse than her original attitude. If she keeps this attitude and meets Luobai, then Luobai will definitely teach her a more profound lesson than what she experienced at the beginning. But after hearing Guion's words, Hancock snorted coldly. I really want to meet Luobai and see what kind of man this man dares to kill celestial dragons, or even enslave celestial dragons. However, what do you mean by tame? Are you provoking me? Or, are you so confident in Luobai? For Hancock, Luobai, who killed and enslaved celestial dragons in Sabayati Archipelago, really piqued Hancock's interest. Hancock couldn't help but want to find out more about Luobai. But this does not mean that Hancock will respect Luobai because of what he did. What Guion said about taming is simply a fantasy. You must know that over the years, countless men have fallen under the skirt of Hancock, the world's #1 beauty. Hancock has never let anyone succeed. In fact, Hancock has never made excuses for any man, and even his attitude towards women is very bad. How could a proud pirate queen believe in being tamed by a man? Guion didn't feel anything strange about Hancock's reaction, but looked at her deeply and said solemnly, I hope you will remember what you said today. Without waiting for Hancock to respond, he turned and left here. Looking at the back of Guion leaving, Hancock sneered and shook his head slightly. That's it. The more you say that, the more I'm curious about Obai. I really want to see what kind of magic Obai, who is the dignified admiral candidate and the elite vice admiral of naval headquarters, has begun to fall into. Although Guion did not reveal it, Hancock could clearly perceive that Guion, the marine vice admiral, had an unusual attitude towards Obai. Coupled with the conversation between Kaji and Guion just now, it's easy to understand the key. This marine vice admiral has unconsciously assumed the identity of a Obai woman. As for what she said just now, she, the pirate queen, will be tamed by Obai. It's just ridiculous. In the midst of busy preparations, it is finally time for the public execution. After escorting Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh to the execution stand at naval headquarters, Sengoku, who was on the execution platform, looked around at the sailors below. In order to deal with all the forces that may appear in this war, Sengoku issued an order to summon all the marine executives to naval headquarters. Even the presence of Marine Vice Admiral, who was stationed in New World, such as Virgo, was enough to show Sengoku's preparation. Now that everything has been arranged, Sengoku will of course not hesitate any longer, and immediately shouted with a big hand. Turn on the live broadcast. Let the whole world see the situation of the execution platform. Yes, Marshal Sengoku. With Sengoku's order, the live broadcast that touched the hearts of people all over the world started immediately, and the images of naval headquarters spread to every corner of the world. It is no exaggeration to say that after the live broadcast of this public execution started, almost everyone put down what they were doing. Concentrate on watching this live broadcast that can affect the entire world. Especially those who are related to Fire Fist Ace, Straw Hat Luffy, and Pluton Rayleigh, they can no longer care about other things at this time. East Blue Windmill Village. Ace, Luffy, how did you two brats get caught by Marine and be publicly executed by Marine? Dan, the bandit who raised Ace and Luffy for many years, looked at the two figures on the execution platform, and his heart was pulled. She could never have imagined that not long ago, she was rejoicing to be famous for Luffy's straw hats, but when she turned around, Luffy was about to be publicly executed. And, all at once, Ace and Luffy were publicly executed together. As for Pluton Rayleigh next to them. Sorry, Rayleigh doesn't deserve a name here in Dayton. Makino also felt very sad. She was full of worries about Ace and Luffy, and she didn't want to see Ace and Luffy die on the execution platform anyway. Even the head of the Windmill Village was silently watching the naval headquarters in front of him. As the hometown of Ace and Luffy, everyone in Windmill Village has gathered together, praying in their hearts for these two little devils. Hope someone can save them from Marine. Dayton even gritted his teeth and looked at another figure on the execution platform and couldn't help scolding. You, Garp, can't you, as a Marine hero, ignore the life and death of your family? Is the task more important than the family? Ace and Luffy are your grandsons. Dayton's words made all the villagers in Windmill Village nervously look at Garp's location. As a Marine hero, if Garp wants to rescue Ace and Luffy, it should be easy. Also, is Garp really going to watch Ace and Luffy die right in front of him? With such doubts in mind, everyone present stared at the picture in front of them. It's not just the villagers of Windmill Village who do this. The Palace of Alabasta, Vivi is also watching the scene from naval headquarters. Cobra on the side couldn't help but ask, Vivi, Marine's war has nothing to do with this Alabasta, why do you feel a little nervous? Vivi shook his head when he heard the words. I think Obai is likely to be involved in this war, and I don't want to miss a single scene where Obai appears. Hearing this, Cobra's eyes almost popped out, and he felt extremely aggrieved in his heart. How long has Obai been away from Alabasta? Do you think of Obai to this extent? At this moment, Cobra was even a little fortunate. Fortunately, Obai's character would not stay in Alabasta forever. Otherwise, my daughter, I am afraid that apart from sticking to Obai's side, she will never care about anything else. Cobra shook his head helplessly. What Obai did in Subjugating Archipelago has completely angered the world government. If he still wants to participate in this war and sabotage the plans of the world government, then the five elders will never let Obai go. Cobra is well aware of the behavior of the five elders, and Obai's killing and enslaving celestial dragons in the Subjugating Archipelago is too high profile. Even if the world government wants to bury it, it is simply impossible to do. In the past few days, the celestial dragons, who were originally high above, have become the laughingstock of the whole world. I don't know how long it will take to restore their original status. And all this was caused by obai. How could the world government let obai off the hook? After hearing Cobra's words, Vivi's brows furrowed, and his face was full of worry. World government, 5 elders. Father, I want to become stronger. I will go to obai in the future. No matter what happens to him, I must stand by his side and accompany him to face it. Cobra was stunned. He really didn't expect that Vivi would be able to say such a thing. You must know that according to Cobra's ideas, he is now cultivating Vivi to take over his own class, and to make Vivi the next queen of Alabasta. As a result, after learning about the crisis obai was facing, Vivi actually thought of going to New World to accompany obai. What kind of charm does obai have to make Vivi achieve this level? Cobra was silent for a long time before finally giving a wry smile and consoling. Vivi, as the only queen of Alabasta, you are responsible for the people of Alabasta. Vivi gave Cobra a strange look and said without hesitation. I didn't say I wasn't responsible for them, did I? It's just that before taking over as the queen of Alabasta, I can still have my own choices in life. Don't worry, Father, I will come back after all. After Vivi finished speaking, without waiting for Cobra to continue, he turned his head to look at the image of naval headquarters coming from the opposite side. Seeing this situation, Cobra's whole body went numb. The dignified Princess Alabasta, is she really going to New World to follow obai? Just when Cobra was about to say something, Vivi suddenly said excitedly. The sea is strange. Hearing this, Cobra didn't care to dissuade Vivi from giving up the idea of following obai, and directly fixed his eyes on the opposite live broadcast screen. Under their gaze, they could clearly see that huge air bubbles appeared on the sea surface of the inner harbor of naval headquarters, and these air bubbles were still growing and getting bigger. Seeing this, Vivi frowned and said suspiciously, is this a force that caught Marine off guard? But, is it the Whitebeard pirates, or the Red Hair pirates? Or, are the remnants of the Roger pirates? As soon as Vivi's voice fell, he saw a huge pirate ship rising out of the sea. The pirate flag on the ship, as well as the characteristics of this huge pirate ship, all show the identity of the members of the pirate ship. It is the Whitebeard pirates, one of the New World 4 emperors. Seeing the Moby Dick of the Whitebeard pirates emerge from the sea, Sengoku on the execution platform couldn't help frowning. His eyes were fixed on Whitebeard, who was standing firmly on the bow. Is this operation done with the Subjugating archipelago coating? Whitebeard, I really underestimate you. You must know that in order to prevent the Whitebeard pirates from directly invading the naval headquarters, Sengoku has made all the arrangements, except for the submarine. Originally thought that with Whitebeard's character and behavior, he would directly choose to attack naval headquarters. But now it seems, Whitebeard doesn't want to see too many sacrifices for his sons in this war. However, this war is definitely not something that Whitebeard can say. The first time he saw the Whitebeard pirates appear, Ace, who was kneeling on the execution platform, was immediately excited. On the one hand, he was moved by his father taking Marco and the others to save him, and on the other hand, he regretted that he had caused the Whitebeard pirates to fall into the war with Marine. Under the mixed situation, Ace didn't know how to treat Whitebeard for a while. And Luffy and Rayleigh on the side don't have so many scruples. Ace, is this your captain, Whitebeard? Without waiting for Ace to answer, Rayleigh, who was beside him, sighed directly. That's right, he is Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. I haven't seen each other in years, Whitebeard. A look of nostalgia flashed in Rayleigh's eyes, thinking of the battle scene between the Roger pirates and the Whitebeard pirates. It's just that time has changed. Pluton's broken arm is about to be executed by Marine, and this guy Whitebeard is already old. Just then, Whitebeard suddenly shouted loudly, Ace, I brought your brothers and came to save you. Seeing Ace kneeling on the ground bound by the shackles on the execution platform, Whitebeard's heart surged with pride and anger. Whitebeard has been standing at the top of the New World ever since the Rocks pirate fell apart in the Valley of the Gods War. Whether it was Roger and the Golden Lion back then, or Shanks, Kaido, Charlotte Linlin and the others now, Whitebeard has never fallen off the first tier, and is firmly at the top of the New World food chain. Even, not to mention Shanks, Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, even Marine and the world government would definitely not want to provoke Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. However, now Marine has made a plan to publicly execute Fire Fist Ace, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. If Whitebeard can ignore it, then he is not Whitebeard. It is precisely because of this, knowing that Marine has made a lot of preparations for this war. Whitebeard still resolutely brought his Whitebeard pirates to naval headquarters. No matter what the cost, Ace must be rescued. He is a remnant of the old era, but he is not old enough to mention that he can't move his sword. Whitebeard put a pestle on the deck, and looked at Sengoku, who was standing beside Ace on the execution platform, and grinned. "We haven't seen each other in decades, Sengoku." Sengoku's face was gloomy, and his eyes were full of anger. Whitebeard, he is as arrogant as ever. Whitebeard ignored Sengoku's anger and just grinned. "My dear son, are you all right?" The voice fell, and Ace on the execution platform could no longer contain the emotion and heat in his heart, and shouted, "Dad!" Following Ace's shout, the Marines below finally reacted and looked at the crew on the Moby Dick opposite, and couldn't help but become serious. The 14 captains of the Whitebeard pirates are here. Whitebeard has made up his mind. No matter what the price is, he wants to save Fire Fist Ace from our Marine. It seems that there is a tough battle to be fought. Although the words are full of worries, these Marines are more excited. For their Marines, if they could take this opportunity to destroy the Whitebeard pirates in one fell swoop, that would be a huge credit. Whitebeard didn't continue talking nonsense with Sengoku, but smiled at Ace on the execution platform, and then shouted loudly, "Little ones, Ace is your brother, but now Marine is going to publicly execute your brother, do you agree?" Whitebeard's voice just fell, and the members of the Whitebeard pirates standing behind him roared instantly. "No promise. No one can hurt Ace. With us, Marine or anyone else, absolutely can't hurt Ace." Whitebeard nodded in satisfaction, raised Kong Yuncho and pointed at Sengoku on the execution platform opposite. Seeing the gloom on Sengoku's face, Whitebeard shouted again. "Marine gathered all the fighting forces in order to prevent us from rescuing Ace. In the face of this situation, what are you going to do?" After hearing Whitebeard's words, Diamond Yoja, the captain of the 3rd Division behind him, was the first to respond. "No one can stop us from rescuing Ace. Oh, kill Marine. Save Ace. Kill Marine. Save Ace." Quote, quote. The roars of the members of the Whitebeard pirates echoed throughout the naval headquarters, and Marine gathered here was not surprised. After all, when they learned that they were going to face the Whitebeard pirates, they were already mentally prepared for it. However, after the roar of the Whitebeard pirates was broadcast to every corner of the world through the live broadcast equipment, the faces of all the people became panic. Pirates like the Whitebeard pirates are too arrogant. Even though he was in naval headquarters, he said that he wanted to kill Marine. Isn't this an interpretation of the viciousness of pirates? But the only thing they can do now is to honestly watch the picture in front of them, and at the same time pray in their hearts that Marine must win this war. Whitebeard didn't know that his son's words would cause the whole world to panic, and even if he knew, he wouldn't care at all. The most important thing now is to save Ace. Thinking of this, Whitebeard did not hesitate at all, and directly embedded the cloud in his hand on the deck below his feet. Immediately, his legs squatted slightly, his arms crossed in front of his chest, and an invisible force condensed on Whitebeard's fists. Seeing Whitebeard's iconic action, Sengoku's pupils on the execution platform shrank slightly, when he even wanted to speak to remind Marine below. However, before he could say anything, Whitebeard grinned at Sengoku, and then his fists slammed to the sides. Crack! Two sounds like glass breaking suddenly sounded, and the entire space seemed to be shattered by Whitebeard's 2 punches. Under the influence of the shock fruit ability, the originally calm sea beneath the Moby Dick instantly set off turbulent waves. The warships that were originally docked at the port were floating around under the impetus of this wave. Boom! Under the horrified gazes of the seamen in naval headquarters, the monstrous tide surged up and hit the naval headquarters where they were located. The originally cloudless sky was blocked by the waves on both sides of naval headquarters, leaving the sailors below directly in shadow. After seeing this situation, the sailors suddenly panicked. No way, the war hasn't really started yet. This guy Whitebeard drowned naval headquarters with 2 punches. At this moment, Marine 3 Admiral, who had been sitting quietly on a high chair, finally made a move. Aokiji stomped hard, his body jumped directly into the air, his arms stretched out, and the ice suddenly condensed out in his hands. Under the control of Aokiji, the two solid ices in his hand spread forward, and after touching the wave set off by Whitebeard's shock fruit ability. The wave that was originally photographed against the naval headquarters below suddenly stopped. The next moment, under the influence of frozen fruit's ability, the wave directly turned into a solid ice wall. Ice Age. See, the sea ice is still spreading, and at a very fast speed. The Moby Dick, where the Whitebeard pirates are located, is directly frozen on the sea surface. What Aokiji wants to do is not only to break the Whitebeard offensive, but also to prevent the Whitebeard pirates from leaving the naval headquarters inner harbor. After finishing this, Aokiji did not stop, but raised his arms and pointed directly at Whitebeard on the bow of the Moby Dick. Under the control of Aokiji, two tridents made of solid ice appeared directly in front of him. The next moment, the two tridents flew towards Whitebeard's location at a high speed. Laugh. The sound of tearing the air came, and Whitebeard just stared at the two tridents with a grin, with no intention of avoiding it at all. Just as the trident was about to pierce Whitebeard, Jaws appeared directly in front of him. Most of Jaws's body has been transformed into a diamond shape. Facing Aokiji's trident, he raised his fists and slammed it out without hesitation. Boom! Two loud noises spread throughout the sky, and even the trident created by Aokiji with the ability of frozen fruit was extremely fragile in front of Jaws's diamond form. The shattered ice cubes were scattered on the ground, forming a corresponding picture with Jaws's dazzling body. Hey hey hey, Aokiji, want to hurt daddy? That's not okay. Jaws raised his head and looked at Aokiji, who was slowly descending from the air, with a relaxed smile on his face. In fact, everyone in the Whitebeard pirates knows very well that their father's body is no longer at its peak. If possible, the captains such as Marco and Jaws, of course, hope that they can rescue Ace only by virtue of them. Instead of letting Dad personally participate in this war. Aokiji didn't care about Jaws's provocation, and just looked at each other calmly. What he was going to do was temporarily over, and the rest was up to everyone else's performance. Kizaru stood up without hesitation. His body began to become elemental, and the photons gradually rose into the air, making the Marine Admiral appear directly in the air. As much as Kizaru wanted to get his hands dirty, he also knew how important this war was to Marine. As a Marine Admiral, all Kizaru can do now is to take out as many members of the Whitebeard pirates as possible. The eyes hidden under the sunglasses condensed slightly, his arms crossed, and the dazzling yellow light condensed in his hands. 8 feet Joan Tomo. With Kizaru's loud shout, countless light bullets flew towards Whitebeard standing on the bow of the Moby Dick. Seeing this situation, Jaws immediately wanted to block Kizaru's offensive for his father. However, someone moved faster than Jaws. I saw a blue light blooming, and Marco, who had transformed into a phoenix, flapped his wings and flew towards the position where Kizaru was in the air. Kizaru's 8-footed Joan Tomo landed on Marco in phoenix form, only setting off ripples without causing any damage to the captain of the Whitebeard pirates' first team at all. Under the watchful eyes of all the sailors below and the members of the Whitebeard pirates on the Moby Dick, Marco in the form of a phoenix quickly flew in front of Kizaru. Raise your right leg, aim at Kizaru like a battle axe, and slash down. Boom! When he stepped down, Kizaru was kicked into yellow light and hit the wall of naval headquarters directly. Boom! This wall was torn apart by Kizaru, dust and gravel were flying. Seeing this situation, the members of the Whitebeard pirates on the Moby Dick immediately shouted. Nice job, Captain Marco. Not even Marine Admiral can stop us from rescuing Ace. Go, kill these Marines. Get Ace and his brother out. Oh, the members of the Whitebeard pirates jumped off the Moby Dick one by one and ran towards the naval headquarters ahead. Aokiji was originally trying to prevent the Whitebeard pirates from evacuating the frozen sea, but now it has become the best channel for them to rush to naval headquarters. Seeing this situation, Whitebeard just stood silently on the bow, looking at Ace on the execution platform and grinning. Wait for us, Ace. With us here, there will never be any surprises for you. After all, I want you to succeed, Roger, and become the next One Piece. At the same time as Whitebeard sighed, the members of the Whitebeard pirates had already made contact with the Navy, and the two sides immediately launched an extremely fierce fight. Facing the resistance of these Marines, Joes bent down and pulled out a huge piece of ice from under his feet with his hands. Because the weight of this huge piece of ice was too heavy, Jaws' face became a little grim, watching the sailors in front grit their teeth, and threw them directly at them with all their strength. Faced with this huge block of ice that is enough to crush anyone, the faces of the seamen below showed panic. However, before they could make any move, Akainu, who was the only one left on the 3 chairs below the execution platform, finally stood up. Looking at the approaching ice cube, Akainu said expressionlessly, "If we all attack, who will guard this place?" As Akainu's voice fell, his arm gradually turned into hot lava, and the next moment, Akainu threw his fist directly at the piece of ice. Great eruption. A huge fist-shaped magma slammed into the ice block, and there was a roar that was so intense that it was almost tinnitus. 0. Under the great eruption of Akainu, the ice cubes shattered directly, and the scalding lava fell with the ice cubes. Seeing this, the members of the Whitebeard pirates below began to flee, and they didn't want to come into contact with these magma anyway. However, Akainu's real target has never been these little characters, but Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man in the world. Seeing the huge fist-shaped lava attacking him, Whitebeard picked up Kong Yunchi beside him and stabbed it without hesitation. Boom! A loud noise came, and the mighty great eruption was directly blocked by Whitebeard. Whitebeard blew out the surging flames on Kong Yuncut with a "ha," and grinned at Akainu who was opposite him. "Go light the candles for the birthday cake, Magma Kid." Akainu raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard the words, and a smile without the slightest warmth appeared on his face. "Don't like lavish funerals, Whitebeard." While Whitebeard and Akainu were talking harshly to each other, Mahawk, the eagle-eyed man on the other side, felt the aura emanating from Whitebeard and whispered, "How much difference is there between us people and the man in front of us?" Mahawk wanted to find out the answer to this question, and when he even took out the black knife from behind, he slashed towards where Whitebeard was. Laugh. With one slash, a slash slashed directly towards Whitebeard. The hard ice along the way was left a deep mark by Mahawk's slash, and Mahawk was a little disappointed that his slash did not reach Whitebeard's position, but was blocked by Vista, captain of the 5th Division of the Whitebeard pirates on the way. Vista, armed with 2 knives, grinned at Mahawk after blocking Mahawk's slash. "Mahawk, I have long wanted to fight with you, the world's #1 swordsman. Since you've chosen to help Marine, let's fight." Without any hesitation, Vista rushed towards Mahawk's position. Mahawk does not intend to refuse this, and also chooses to welcome the past. Seeing this situation, Doflamingo on the side laughed lowly. "It's getting more and more interesting, just don't know, when will the other guys come?" Moria even stared at Whitebeard with a burning look in her eyes. The strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, should his corpse be stronger than Oz the Demon? Hancock watched the war with a cold eye, feeling bored in his heart. Will the man named Obai really appear in this war? While Marine and the Whitebeard pirates go to war, Ace on the execution platform is in more and more pain. Watching his partner who has been with him for several years die in naval headquarters, he, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard pirates, is the culprit. On the other hand, Luffy couldn't help but exclaimed, "Ace, your partners are really strong." Ace heard the words and forced a smile, of course. After all, this is the Whitebeard pirates. After hearing Ace's words, Sengoku even wanted to sneer, but the phone bug in his pocket suddenly rang, interrupting Sengoku's thoughts. After the phone worm was connected and heard the words from inside, Sengoku's face instantly became extremely gloomy, and his eyes were filled with thick anger. Marshal Sengoku, that guy Obai, invaded Impel down. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.